On November 5, 2024, an unidentified object fell from space directly onto the capital of the country. A huge shock wave instantly destroyed the island nation. The 5 largest powers of the Blue Star closed off the place from other people overnight, and in order to figure out what happened, they sent their best scientists to that island. A new era is dawning for humanity. A year later, in the Chinese town of Haiqing, his colleague showed him a photo of a girl in a bikini, and told him to look. A 20-year-old girl is looking for someone to adopt her. Would he like to take such a thing to himself, to pass on his patriotic spirit to her and make her proud of her country? The protagonist did not react at all, and he, waving his hand in front of his face, asked why he was crying. Lin Luo shuddered, realizing that he was now in company. But hadn't he recently been in the epicenter of chaos? He remembers that almost a year has passed since an unidentified object fell to the ground, and the world seemed to have turned into a cruel game world. Some of them awakened new powers, while others changed jobs and gained extraordinary abilities. When secret underground kingdoms appeared in the world, and beasts awakened to fight against humans, mortals could only gather their resources and fight for survival together. The laws of order collapsed in an instant, leaving only the law of the jungle, where there are weak and strong. In order to improve his skills, he only fights tiger-level ferocious beasts. However, their enemies attracted a high-level ferocious beast with powerful strength. His brother died tragically trying to protect him. He sacrificed his life to lead him out of the secret world, but they were attacked by monsters lying in ambush. And the reason for this is the Ascension Crystal. They couldn't just give it away. In the era of chaos, weakness is the original sin. Waking up from his memories, he asked his colleague, "What date is today?" He replied with a confused expression that today was November 12, 2025, and then asked if he was stupid or if he had drunk too much last night. Young people should know when to stop. Lin Luo ignored him and thought about it. So he had reincarnated and returned to the day he awakened 3 years ago. It should be morning now, and there were still a few hours left before his abilities awakened. Noticing his condition, the general manager Wang Jichao pointed his finger at him with displeasure and exclaimed that his actions were contrary to their company's values, so he would be fired. Let him go down to the accounting department and get his settlement, and never show up in their company again. Hearing a familiar voice, Lin Luo glanced at him out of the corner of his eye and thought that he knew it. He just needed to find some reason to fire him right after he moved in. In his previous life, he transformed into a demon after awakening, collecting organs, limbs, and lives of ordinary people in exchange for resources to enhance his strength. He forced innocent people to sell their bodies and do evil deeds for his own benefit. He never thought that he would meet him again after what he did. Without further ado, he headed towards the exit of the office, and the manager and his colleagues laughed, saying that he was an idiot raised by scum. Does he deserve to be appreciated by you? He doesn't even want to think about people like him. His colleague said that he was right. Going against his boss was too much. The guy overestimated his capabilities. The man standing next to him said that he never thought that he would be such a coward. He just left without even saying anything. A few minutes later, the protagonist walked out of the company building thinking that in his past life, he beat the general manager almost to death. He was even taken away by law enforcement. As a result, that day was the beginning of a national awakening. He missed it because he spent 10 days in the detention center, and when he got out, almost all the people had reached level 10 and above. When he and his brother were orphaned in an orphanage and survived by stealing, his brother Xinzhou, who was sentenced to 15 years, was released from prison, and then his life became much more wonderful. He was released early because high-level powers awakened in him, and he was able to make a great contribution to the fight against monsters. After that, he took him in and they went through difficult missions together. After some time, a terrible incident happened. While saving a girl, he accidentally killed an ordinary person, and that's when he realized that powers had awakened in him. Then the system told him that without using his abilities, he could directly deprive another person of their power level by simply killing them. By capturing the enemy's power, he could increase his talents. Unfortunately, his brother did not allow him to simply kill someone, as a result of which already evil people became even more evil. In the end, he was unable to protect those around him, and they both died. Walking out with a pack of gloves and a rope in his hands, he thought that in his new life, he would no longer experience the helplessness and hatred he had experienced. If kindness was not encouraged in any way, then he would appeal to justice through the heavens. He would be more ruthless than the most ruthless people, and more evil than all the evil ones. He would control his own destiny. His gaze filled with confidence, and he, clenching the rope in his fist, said that his enemies would be his incentive, and only he would take the throne of the winner. Before the moment of awakening, he locked himself in a toilet stall and began to wait. Soon, a system window appeared in front of him, welcoming him to a new era. From now on, the Blue Star will open different levels of secret worlds anywhere in the world. After his abilities awaken, he will find himself in a dungeon. The secret kingdom will awaken his own fighting profession. He had obtained the strength of F rank, but his rank could rise. Whenever he took a person's life, he would steal 1% of their attribute value or 1% of their ability score. He had 5 days to clear it. Lin Luo smirked and thought that of course, it was the same as his previous life. As a reincarnated human, he knew the secrets of all the known dungeons near the city after the beginning and the era, the universal movements, as well as the secret passages. More importantly, he could raise his talent to SSS rank in a short time. At this moment, he heard the voice of the general manager outside the door, who was talking to someone on the phone. His expression immediately changed, and he listened in. After slightly opening the door, he noticed him and overheard him awakening the S-rank talent healing grip and inviting the D-rank person to follow him. He told him not to worry and asked him if he thought he needed that rich lady now. After finishing the phone call, he passed by the toilet stall where Lin Luo was hiding, thinking that when he got tired of him, he would use him as a healing material. Without wasting any time, the protagonist jumped out of the toilet stall and wrapped a rope around his neck, saying that he was glad to see him again. He would be perfect as a sacrifice for his reincarnation. Suddenly, a male glowing silhouette appeared next to him, and he thought that this was a special incarnation that was unique to S-rank abilities, thanks to which he could summon his doppelganger. His doppelganger began to heal him, and MC, noticing this, said that unfortunately, it was too late to heal. As he was suffocating, the system reported that he had taken the enemy's soul power. Now his ability was increasing by 1 rank. When his enemy started foaming at the mouth, his rank rose to C rank, and when he died, it was S rank. Hearing the system notifications, Lin Luo exhaled and loosened his grip, saying that he could now view his skill. Seeing the new rank of his ability, he thought that in his previous life, he and his brother spent 3 years raising their abilities to a rank. And now, just a few hours after his reincarnation, he surpassed himself and reached S rank. It was simply unbelievable. Swinging his hand to the side, he summoned his doppelganger and ordered him to come out, after which a knight in black armor formed from the black smoke and appeared before his master. The system showed information about him. This is his double, the Dark Emperor of the S rank. He has 210 units of strength, while an ordinary person only has 10. Agility 200, Intelligence 1, Defense 55, Health 5000, Energy 50. Recovery speed, 1 point per hour, Height 200. Movement range 1 meter. He attacks the enemy, and if he is harmed, it will be automatically absorbed. This consumes 10 units of energy. There is no recovery. The protagonist thought that his attributes are very strong. Even in the era of chaos, his double will be better than any person. The double created by the power of the S rank has a maximum attribute value of 200 points, excluding health. Doubles of the SS rank have a maximum attribute value of 400 points, and the rank above is 600. The Dark Emperor has 3 values that have reached the upper limit. His weaknesses are his intelligence, defense, and range. His intelligence is so low that he can control a fight with just his thoughts, and he is also the strongest close combat double. His ability to take by force does not work on other doubles, but his ability compensates for this. In addition, his height of 200 is something that many SSS rank doubles do not have. He ordered the Dark Emperor to get rid of the body, and he, throwing the corpse over his shoulder, trudged towards the exit of the restroom. Lin Luo looked after him and thought that the general manager turned into a devil after the onset of the era of chaos. For him, dying in the toilet is a dignified death. He left the room and smiled, thinking that he was afraid that more than 1 month would pass before he was found here. Right now, he feels invincible. Going outside and looking at the phone screen, he thought that everyone's abilities had awakened, and even the once empty offices were bustling with life. He opened the chat of the 3rd year of the Faculty of Finance, and read the messages. A guy named Xiao Zipa wrote that he had awakened a C-rank power, extreme speed. Now there is no one to stop him from becoming a king. Wang Ting called him trash and told him to stay away from him. He had awakened an A-rank emperor talent, and was currently going somewhere to enter a dungeon. Lu Ming called him a kid and said that his talent was nothing. Now he had awakened an S-rank power, wish book, so he should call him daddy. Wang Ting immediately called him daddy, and the others in the chat were very surprised by this. After reading their messages, Lin Luo thought that he remembered how the idiot Lu Ming immediately got together with Fang Menju, the top beauty of the class, right after awakening. After that, he killed many innocent people and inspectors in various ways, and also joined a certain group. So this time, he will take away his power for the benefit of the entire city. Meanwhile, Lu Ming was sitting in his room at the hotel, with his doppelganger floating next to him. He chuckled and thought that this guy finally called him daddy. It's so cool that this doppelganger actually grants his master's wishes. He turned to the doppelganger and, calling him the Lord of Prayer, said that he wanted to completely obtain Fang Mengzhu's body and mind. He submitted to him and said that his wish had come true. Lu Ming let out a chuckle and took out his phone, thinking that the doppelganger would be arriving soon, so his goddess couldn't miss this show. He texted her and she asked, "What's wrong?" She was chatting with her friend right now. By the way, has his ability awakened? He didn't reply and texted that he was waiting for her in room 414 of the Pingjing Hotel. They needed to talk. Let her remember that he was waiting for her in black stockings. She immediately replied that she would come and wear what he liked. He was very happy. He laughed loudly and exclaimed that he was incredible. He now had so much power. As long as his double was here, he could rule the whole world. At that moment, Lin Luo called him and said that he had found the main advantage of an S-class double. It would be useful for him. Where is he? They needed to meet urgently. Lu Ming asked if he had also awakened a talent of this level. He was at the hotel now. How long would it take for him to arrive? He replied that he would arrive as soon as he could, and Lu Ming agreed and gave his room number. After ending the call, he grinned and said that now he would receive not only his secret, but also the goddess of his dreams. 5 minutes later, The protagonist entered his room and he, deciding to get straight to the point, asked what kind of ability he had. Let him tell him quickly, because he still had an appointment here. The protagonist agreed and said that now he would tell him everything. Approaching his face, he began to whisper the secret of his ability in his ear, and at the same time, the Dark Emperor appeared next to him. Noticing the movement behind him, Lu Ming turned around in fear, but before he could do anything, Lin Luo's double hit him in the face with all his might, causing him to fly to the side and hit the wall, immediately dying. The system reported that his robbery ability was starting. Let him choose what he wants to take: attributes, abilities, skill, or soul power. The protagonist examined his corpse and thought that he was an ordinary person with a small number of attributes, and he did not have any special skills until his abilities awakened. Soul power can increase his ability level, but S-rank strength will not be enough for him to improve, so it is more useful for him to use his abilities. He replied that he would take the ability, and the system reported that he successfully robbed the enemy and received the S-rank ability Book of Desires. This ability can apply 3 forms of desire. First, the desire for battle increases the number of hits by 30%, multiplies the experience gained from killing monsters by 2 times. Second, the desire for attack increases evasion by 20. Any type of attack does not work every 10 minutes. Third, the desire for luck increases his luck by 10 times. Duration: 5 minutes after each reincarnation. After reading this, Lin Luo said with a smile that the Book of Wishes is a good ability. It is good for both offense and attack, and also brings good luck. He summoned his new doppelganger, the Lord of Prayers, and a system window appeared in front of him, showing information about him. This S-rank doppelganger has 20 strength, 40 agility, 180 intelligence, 50 defense, 4000 health, 200 energy. Recovery: 1 point every 2 hours. Growth 80. Movement range 15 meters. He has the ability Book of Wishes, which grants 1 wish of the owner. The consumption is determined by the complexity of the execution, and there is no time limit. Appearing nearby, the Lord of Prayer sank to the floor and Lin Luo asked in surprise, "Can they talk to each other?" He confirmed his words and said that he is a special double who can do more than any other. If the Book of Wishes ends up in his hands, he will be able to fulfill any of his wishes. Of course, simple wishes consume little energy, and complex ones a lot. If he makes too many wishes, they can kill him. By the way, his intellect is more developed than that of other doubles, so he can always help him with advice. Lin Luo became interested and asked him to advise him on how to use his abilities correctly. He replied that he thinks that his wishes mean a lot to him, but in fact they are easy to fulfill. MC asked if this is so, then instead of asking him to give him treasure, why doesn't he ask where it is? The Lord called him a smart man and said that a wish that can be easily fulfilled requires a small amount of energy, while creating something out of nothing requires a lot of energy. For example, winning the lottery is much less labor-intensive than creating a bottle of water out of nothing. If he uses the wish book on another person, the energy consumption depends on that person's willpower. Lin Luo asked if he wanted his brother to be released from police surveillance, how much would it cost him? He replied that this wish would take all his energy and plunge him into silence for a while. In addition, due to the difficulty of fulfilling the wish, the process may drag on and his brother will not be able to free himself quickly. Hearing this, the protagonist realized that the wish must be logical. It would be strange if someone's crazy dream came true. He smirked and said that it seemed like the most correct solution was to request information about other S-rank abilities. The Dark Emperor appeared next to him, and he thought that he got rid of the body so quickly. Noticing the clock face on his chest, he wondered if he really had a watch on his chest. Why did he only notice it now? And the hands were in the same position. He turned to the Lord of Prayer and asked him how much he knew about doppelgangers. Was the image of the doppelganger related to the ability of its owner? He confirmed his words and he thought about it. The Dark Emperor didn't have any ability related to time. Maybe the clock appeared because of his reincarnation? He couldn't seem to figure it out yet, so he would leave it for later. If he found the answers to all his questions now, there would be no more unsolvable mysteries in this world. He needed to start by using the power he had gained and exploring all the dungeons and secret areas. Leaving the room, he went down to the lobby and saw Feng Menju there, dressed in a short dress and stockings. She looked through her message history with a gloomy face and cursed, wondering why she sent so many disgusting messages to this idiot. Why did she even come to this place? I wish he would get banned soon, he is so disgusting. The protagonist calmly walked past her and approached the girl at the front desk, asking her to extend room 414 for another 7 days. His friend does not like to be disturbed, so there is no need to clean the room. She agreed with a smile, after which he left the hotel. Meanwhile, a man named Yu Taijia, who was sitting in his office, turned to his double, the Mistress of Time, and asked where her white watch is now. Also, why was his time travel moved to a different date? She replied that when she was returning to him, an unknown being took away part of her power, causing a distortion in the time-space. He slammed his fist on the table in anger and thought that he didn't expect that after spending so much money, he would still get into trouble. He awakened the extremely rare SSS rank, time travel, ability during the era of universal awakening, thanks to which he killed one of the gods to break through to another dimension. But unfortunately, he met a person from the illogical clan on his way. The mute opponent was able to easily defeat him. So he had to activate the time travel ability. He even used up the entire energy limit of the doppelganger from 40 to 40. This caused her to get caught in a time loop. He couldn't even imagine that something like this would happen. He wanted to come back a week before the general awakening, but ended up coming back a few hours after. The Time Mistress had lost the Time King's power, so there were many obstacles ahead. While he was thinking, she closed her eyes and said that she seemed to feel the Time King's power. It seemed to be from someone in Hangzhou City. He asked if she was sure. Why did her powers transfer to another person? She replied that she thought it was the person he met on his journey. But why does he want to find her? He can take away his abilities, which means that a special power flows within him, and besides, he is bad at close combat. His ability is now at 0. So he does not need to look for him. He ignored her warning and asked if she was sure that he was from the illogical clan. She asked him to believe her. She felt that her power was now in someone. He said that they should first go to the dungeon and look for their former teammates. She mentally countered that they should first gain strength. He would always have time to settle scores with his enemy. Since this man dared to steal something from her master, she wanted to know who he was. Soon it was night, and the protagonist went to the portal, where a huge crowd had gathered. A policeman stood in front of them and asked them to go through the dungeon with special care. He advised them to split into groups of 5. And he would warn them again that they needed to be very careful in this place. One of the awakened ones enthusiastically asked if this was their dungeon. It was beautiful. Someone asked the others to split into teams, and someone asked if he would be able to awaken new abilities after this passage. No one answered him, and enthusiastic words were heard that a new era had arrived. It reminded him of a map of the planet. One man turned to the guy standing next to him and asked why he didn't go in there. He asked if he should go first? Or did he want him to go in there like cannon fodder? They say you have to come up with a strategy first, and then run into the dungeon. Lin Luo walked forward with a confident look, and someone exclaimed that this guy wanted to go in first. Let them let him in immediately. He was the only one who dared to go in there. As he approached the portal, he heard a voice behind him saying that he was so handsome. He was so young and already such a daredevil. Don't they let people in on command? Why did he go in alone? At this time, Lin Luo extended his hand forward as he passed through the portal and thought that in his past life he was afraid to go there. But now he was more confident than ever. He found himself in another space, and the system reported that a copying process was going on in his body. All the damage he received in the dungeon would be completely eliminated after exiting, and his health would be restored. Those who die in the dungeon will be resurrected and sent out on a mission again. After 3 deaths, they will not be able to be reborn. Let him choose one of the following 6 major jobs: mage, archer, warrior, guardian, assassin, and priest. Lin Luo thought that in his previous life, he became a fighter, a job that is relatively average until level 20. Now he has 2 S-rank abilities, so he needs to find a job that suits his strength. He called the Lord of Prayer and asked if he could advise him on which job he should choose. He replied that he would advise him to choose a mage. With his abilities, after level 20, he will be able to move up to a higher rank Maniseer. In addition, using the power of the Dark Emperor, he can easily deal with the main weakness, close combat. The protagonist rubbed his chin thoughtfully, thinking that it turned out that S-rank talents could lead to promotions to hidden professions. He felt that the Lord of Prayer had his own selfish goals. He asked if he chose a mage and the robbery ability, then what profession would he switch to after the main actions in the dungeon? He replied that he would not recommend him to choose robbery, since it simplifies the mage's abilities. The protagonist thought that although the Lord gave him good advice, his innate ability is robbery, and all processes are still based on the Dark Emperor. This doppelganger's strength and agility levels are at the limit, so choosing an assassin whose agility is the main quality would be the right decision. His face darkened slightly and he asked if he chose an assassin, then what profession would he switch to after the 2nd level? The Lord of Prayer was slightly surprised and said that he could imagine that an outlaw assassin would go well with the robbery power. But he still recommends him to take the profession of a magician, it is easier. Despite his advice, the protagonist chose the assassin and mentally apologized to the Lord, after which the system reported that he successfully changed the specialty. At the moment, his panel with characteristics is being created. Now he is at level 1, health 180, energy 200, attack power 18 plus 6, strength and constitution 9, agility 15. Attack speed 1.2, and movement speed 10.5 meters per second. Spirit 10, intelligence 12, defense 9, magic defense 6. He felt how his characteristics are changing and the system showed his available skills. Shadow Hunt. He can quickly run behind the enemy to launch a deadly attack, dealing damage 10 plus 2.2 times his strength. Cooldown 10 seconds, consumes 10 mana. The skill Ghost Strike gathers the power of the entire body into one blow, dealing damage of 20 plus 2.2 times its power. This blow knocks the enemy back, lasts for 20 seconds, consumes 15 units of mana. Swift Strike. Agility increases by 5, stamina consumption when moving and fighting is reduced by 30%. Quick Reaction. Improves vision in battle by 10%. Strong Strike. The chance of inflicting a critical hit is increased by 1%. A small novice blade appeared in his hand, which adds 6 units to the attack power. Having tried swinging it, he felt the power of the blow and thought that the assassin and the Dark Emperor are the best couple. The system asked him to choose the number of people to complete the mission. The limit of participants is 5 people in one team. He said that there would be only one person and thought that the combat power of the Dark Emperor is now equivalent to the combat power of a player of level 20 or 30. Why does he even need a team? In addition, if he clears the dungeon alone, he will receive a high rating and better rewards. The system reported that this is a goblin dungeon. The recommended level to clear is from 1 to 4. There are 4 available difficulties: easy, normal, hard, hell. This dungeon is often called a paradise for beginner adventurers, but they need to be careful of these little green monsters. Especially women should not wander here alone. Let him choose the difficulty of the dungeon. He chose the most difficult one, and the system reported that the recommended level to clear the mission at this difficulty is from 5 to 10. He can only exit after completing the mission or dying. At the moment, he is level 1. Does he really want to enter this dungeon? He agreed, and then moved to a dark cave, where he was immediately met by a horde of goblins. The system reported that in front of him is a red-eyed goblin of level 5. Health 300, Defense 300, Attack Power 40, Experience 15. This goblin has the Red Eye and Impulse skill. Attack speed is increased by 30% while alive, or decreased by 20% when meeting a female traveler. He extended his hand forward, calling for hundreds of battles, and told the Dark Emperor to come out, after which the system reported that the attack frequency was increased by 20%. He pointed his finger at the monsters in front of him and ordered his doppelganger to destroy them, and then he attacked, dealing a fatal blow of 770 damage. The system reported that he killed the red-eyed goblin. As a reward, he received 150 experience points. Due to the increased difficulty, the experience increases by 500%, and the effect of using 100 battles gives 200% experience. After that, the Dark Emperor began to swing his fists very quickly, dealing hundreds of blows to each goblin around. At this rate, he killed 15 goblins and received a total of 2,250 experience points. A golden glow appeared around him, and he, with a confident smile, clenched his fist in his hand, heard the system notification about reaching the 6th level. At the moment he had 700 experience points out of 1,600. He said that unfortunately, the ability of the Dark Emperor in robbery can only be used 7 times, and these monsters are ordinary trash, so now he needs to save his strength. He decided to look through the points he received, and the system reported that he can freely distribute attribute points in a ratio of 4 to 5, and ability points in a ratio of 2 to 5. Does he want to distribute them now? He didn't answer and thought that he could add poison to the assassin's weapon, and he could convert agility into attack power after the second move. So he needed more agility. As for the abilities, they should all be focused on speed, which is related to agility. He ordered the system to increase agility by 16 points, strength by 4, and agility power by 10. The system reported that the update was complete. It added points to the stats and reported that agility had reached level 11, agility power had increased by 15. Stamina consumption during movement and combat was reduced by 40%. Lin Luo thought that compared to Shadow Hunt and Phantom Strike, agility reduced stamina consumption by 40%. If he didn't want to waste his abilities on pumping up his constitution but still wanted to save energy, then he needed to add agility. This was undoubtedly the most economical option. In his past life, people entered the dungeon and realized that it could be 1,000 meters away. They had to fight even before the mission started, and after a while, their stamina ran out. As a result, many of the players became a burden to their teams even at the beginning of the game. As for the remaining money, it will go to the treasure chest after the boss dies, so he shouldn't take it from there. When goblins appeared on his way again, he ordered the Dark Emperor to attack, and he zigzagged and easily killed them. Lin Luo thought that there was a level 6 wolfskin goblin, a level 7 rock-throwing monster, and a level 8 monster. All of these monsters are getting stronger, but he also does not stand still and raised his level to 7. He headed to the main room of the dungeon with the thought that he can handle it. Now it's the boss's turn. Entering the throne room with a grin, he noticed a huge red monster and a crowd of small goblins next to it. Not far away, several monsters grabbed 2 girls and they, noticing a man, asked him to save them. The protagonist did not pay attention to them and focused on the monsters, thinking that there was a shaman, a large and a fire goblin. There are so many of them, it's a pity that their abilities are very different from the Dark Emperor. Noticing that the huge goblin was heading towards Lin Luo, one of the girls told him to run, but he did not listen and with a gloomy expression said that although they were just NPCs, no matter how many times he looked at them, they still irritated him. Stretching his hand forward and clenching it into a fist, he ordered the Dark Emperor to destroy them, after which his double rushed to meet the goblin. After delivering a powerful blow, he threw him aside, causing him to hit the wall, and then the goblin shamans entered the battle. They began to cast a spell and a green poisonous haze appeared around them, which headed towards the main character, but he and the Dark Emperor managed to hide behind the shield. From the collision of magic with the protective barrier, a powerful explosion occurred and dust rose, and then everything was quiet for a second. Suddenly, the Dark Emperor burst out of the cloud of dust and quickly approached the 2 shamans, delivering a powerful blow and scattering them to the sides. Passing by the corpses of the goblins, Lin Luo found himself at the throne on which the fire goblin sat. Pointing his finger at him, he said that he was left alone. The Dark Emperor prepared for battle, enveloping himself in black sparks, and the goblin caught fire and screamed loudly. Lin Luo's double did not hesitate and rushed forward, delivering the first and last blow, causing the goblin to immediately fall to the ground dead. Lin Luo approached him and said that he was so weak, but only dead goblins are good goblins. The system reported that he killed the wolfskin goblin and the rest. There are 83 shamans, fire goblins and guardian goblins in total. Due to the ability of 100 battle and bonuses for killing monsters, he received a total of 9,700 experience points. His level increased to 9, the current value is 7,340 out of 12,800. The bodies of the goblins in the dungeon lit up and disappeared into a bright whirlpool, from which a treasure chest began to form. The protagonist wished himself luck and the system reported that his luck had increased by 10 times, after which a chest appeared in front of him. Since he was alone in the team and cleared the entire high difficulty dungeon at a low level in 5 minutes, he received a bonus. His completion was rated at SSS rank, for which he received 1,500 points and a gold level treasure chest. This is the highest rank. Lin Luo smiled confidently and thought that of course he got the same. Combat damage and time determine the number of base points, and the number of people and the difference in levels determine the doubling and decreasing of points. The grading scale depends on the points. A rank from 90 to 100 points, S rank from 100 to 200 points, SS rank from 200 to 500 points, and SSS rank from 500 points. Initially, this is a low-level mission. Even on held difficulty he can get a high-level black iron chest. The chests are divided into different types: bronze, black iron, gold, dark gold, diamond, holy, earth, heaven, and immortal. Each type is divided into 3 minor ones: common, rare, and extreme. Thanks to the Lord of Prayers, he can easily get gold. Touching the lid of the chest, he said that it was simply amazing, and then commanded it to open and saw the contents. He received 10 pieces of improved black iron level life recovery potion, 8 pieces of improved energy recovery potion, and 5 pieces of improved physical recovery potion. He thought that these were advanced recovery potions. This was pretty good. He also received a black iron level goblin large helmet with the highest quality, a black iron level torn goblin leather jacket with normal quality, a top level novice frost staff for the rare mage profession, and a top level goblin long knife for the rare warrior profession. These were trash to him, and he turned his gaze to the other rewards. A top tier fireball throwing spell for the rare mage profession, 150 cast iron coins, 15 gold coins, and 7 silver coins. He thought that top tier spells were rated very low. His gaze fell on the most important rewards: a gold tier guardian light armor, suitable for all professions, and a top tier guardian short blade, suitable for his rare assassin profession. He was very lucky. These were 2 pieces of top tier equipment that he could use. He decided to look at the stats of the guardian short blade and saw that it added 60 attack power, 5% attack speed, and 10% damage. Sharpness ignored 10 points of enemy defense, and the blade also inflicted the bleeding status on the enemy. When the owner broke through defense, his enemy would begin to bleed, which dealt 5 points of damage over 10 seconds. He looked at the blade in his hands with a satisfied smile, and thought that this thing was quite valuable. It has 40 more damage than a level 10 bronze sword, and also has 3 additional characteristics and a good effect. He decided to look at the characteristics of the Wanderer's armor, and saw that it adds 25 points to defense, 23 to magic defense, and 200 points to damage. The smoothness ability reduces damage by 7 points from sharp weapons, gives 10% to the speed of evasion. Having put on the armor, he thought that this was a very good thing. The system reported that the player's data was successfully saved. Let him enter the name of his game character. The game name will be available to all players when exploring dungeons and secret areas. As a nickname, he decided to choose the name of his double, the Dark Emperor. A new system window appeared in front of him with congratulations. He became the first in the world who alone passed the Hell level dungeon. The reward is a lucky ticket for 10 rounds of the Wheel of Fate. All the Awakened saw this announcement, and one of them exclaimed, "Who is the Dark Operator? He is so cool that he could go through such a dungeon alone." The girl asked if he is handsome or not. She wants to have a child with him. Some guy said that the lottery Wheel of Fate as a reward is very cool. Yu Taijie, who was among them, thought that something was wrong. He remembered that the previous announcement came late at night. The player who obtained this achievement is a real wolf. He turned to the Time Mistress and asked if she was sure that time travel does not change the course of events. She replied that this ability allows the soul to return to its previous body, nothing more. It should not affect the course of events in any way. Hearing this, he thought about it and said that he had 2 theories. 1, the Dark Emperor in this world took her power to become stronger and clear the dungeon. Or 2, the Dark Emperor from the future took her power to travel to the present and clear the mission. She replied that her power cannot improve someone else's abilities. He was able to clear the dungeon alone. He replied that he could not understand this either. But no matter what, they must find him. If he develops in the dungeons faster than them, there will be trouble. The protagonist took the lucky ticket and thought happily that in his past life he had worked hard for 3 years. But the Wheel of Fortune had only fallen out 5 times. He ordered the Lord of Prayer to come out, and said that it was now his turn to make history. His double appeared in front of him, and said that it was a pleasure to serve him. Lin Luo asked him to help him find out what he needed to do to get the maximum benefit. First, the Lord of Prayer congratulated him on winning the tickets and said that it was a very valuable reward that could only be obtained after completing the dungeons of the Hell or Tower of Babel levels. As far as he knows, in the Wheel of Fortune he can win items of SSS, SSS, A, B, C, D, R and F levels, but many of them are hard to find even in the dungeons. He can get items such as the Potion of Longevity, the Real Crystal, with which he can return his spent powers, excluding equipment. He can get the Crystal of Ascension, which will increase the level of his ability. An Energy Heart that will increase his physical strength regeneration, and a Magic Crystal that will improve his double's attributes. In addition, the probability of getting items of a particular tier can vary greatly. For example, the chance of getting a low tier item will be higher than a high tier item. So even with 10x luck, he may not get an S tier or higher item. Lin Luo asked what if he used his wish-granting power? He replied that if he wished for a specific high tier item, he would sleep for 6 months, and if for a random item, he would sleep for 6 days. Because one SS tier item would cost 190 energy, and another would cost 10. Hearing this, he thought that the double sleep would affect him and take away other people's strength, which was a shame. It seemed like an S tier item would be more reliable. He asked what if he wished for at least 2 S tier or higher items. He replied that he would spend 110 energy. MC said that for such a quantity, there must be at least 1 item above S level. The Lord of Prayer understood him and turning to his book said that his wish would come true. After that, the protagonist used the lottery ticket and it dissolved into thin air, and then a Wheel of Fortune appeared in front of him, which surprised him. The arrow spun and stopped at the Emerald section, after which the system congratulated him on winning the following 10 prizes: a Real Crystal, a Life Extension Potion, a Communication Crystal, a Cruelty Crystal, a Spirit Enhancement Crystal, an Energy Heart, a Life Extension Potion, a Communication Crystal, and a Real Crystal. All these items were from F to a rank and only 1 SS and Extreme Crystal. Lin Luo thought that the Communication Crystal increases the travel range of the double, the Real Crystal increases the energy limit, and the Extreme Crystal gives a short-term acceleration. He actually got everything he wanted. It's pretty good. It's a pity that only the Extreme Crystal is SS level. The other items are significantly inferior in power. Taking the 2 crystals in his hands, he broke them and the system reported that he had used 2 real crystals. After exiting the dungeon, he would receive a 4% increase in attribute values. He handed over the 2 communication crystals to the Dark Emperor and he, after using them, increased his range to 6 meters. After that, MC looked at his rewards again and thought that the Spirit Enhancement Crystal could be used directly, but the Extreme Crystal and Life Extension Potion needed to be selected manually. He still had the Energy Heart and the Cruelty Crystal. He showed the Prayer Lord the crystals and asked who this was for? The Lord's eyes immediately lit up and he, drooling, said that he would advise giving it to him first. If he did so, he would no longer have to worry about his energy problems. Lin Luo agreed and handed him the crystals, after which he said that he made a wise decision. After absorbing it, he increased his energy by 100, and his recovery increased 2-fold. The protagonist thought it was a pity that the real crystals were not enough to increase the attribute value, they only increased by 4%. If he did not have a space crystal, he would not be able to take the equipment he was used to using. To find it, he only needed to go forward. Coming out of the dungeon, he found that many had already been inside and heard someone say that this dungeon was so difficult. His friend agreed with him and said that they had missed their chance to be resurrected. They could have realized earlier that it would be better for them not to go there. Passing by the crowd of people, MC thought that now he had overtaken many in abilities, he had a great opportunity to develop quickly. And now it was time to go to the Tower of Babel to get his first achievement. The number of levels there is infinite. Soon he reached the Tower of Babel, which had already gathered a huge crowd. Some of them had already been inside, and some were looking for a team. The guy standing next to Lin Luo said that he heard that the hardest level was the 8th. He thought that for every 10 floors of the Tower of Babel that he could pass, he could get a lottery ticket for the Wheel of Fortune, so he would have to try really hard this time. Suddenly, a girl came up to him. Calling him handsome, she offered to join him in a team. MC ignored her and passed by, thinking that he was not interested in this. Such nonsense would have a bad effect on his level advancement speed. Once in the Tower of Babel, he saw the Beastmen and said that the tower was very good for beginners, even launched various dogs of the 4th level. He ordered the Dark Emperor to work and he, breaking through together with his master forward, began to inflict many blows. Soon the system reported that he cleared the first floor of the tower. The passage time is 20 seconds. For the first passage, he received 5 fragments of fate. The system congratulates him on completing the first floor of the Tower of Babel in a short period of time. His name Dark Emperor will be popular among players all over the world. He went to the next floor where he was met by angry beastmen, but his double was stronger than them. Confidently walking forward, MC told them to be quick, he was in a hurry. After that, he cleared many floors within 60 seconds and the people outside, seeing the message that the player Dark Emperor only needed 88 seconds to complete the 8th floor of the Tower of Babel, exclaimed that he was so fast, he would definitely break all records. Someone asked who the hell he was to complete the entire tower alone? Soon the protagonist reached the 10th floor and before entering, the system announced that once he entered this floor, he would only be able to exit after completing the level, or dying. He remembered that in his past life, the first person to complete 10 floors alone was Xi Zhu Zhu. Since he was able to go this far, he simply had to get the achievement of at least level 10 and 20. Once on the 10th floor, he saw the dog-headed Lord Ilfin, level 10, in front of him, who had 90 attack power, 70 defense, 5,000 health, and also had 3 skills. Crazy Strike deals strong continuous blows to the target. Attack speed increases by 100%. Call of the Ancestors. He can summon 10 guardians. Fury. When the amount of health is below 2,000, he changes the weapon and attack mode. Without hesitation, Ilfin immediately pounced on him and slammed him into the ground with all his might, and he thought that Crazy Strike combined with a machete was not the best combination for him. The Dark Emperor entered the battle. He rushed forward and met face to face with the Lord, after which he began to deal powerful blows to his chest, which were accompanied by a dull thud. In the end, Ilfin suddenly released energy from himself and threw away the Dark Emperor, and Lin Luo thought, did he really just throw him away? Now the dog-headed Lord has 2 sharp blades in his hands, which means he has entered rage mode. Lunging forward, he swung both his hands and struck, but the Dark Emperor dodged in time and quickly appeared behind him, after which he struck his face. This blow was fatal. Ilfin immediately fell. After that, the system announced to all players that the Dark Emperor became the first player in the world to pass the 10th floor of the Tower of Babel alone. He will be rewarded with 10 lottery tickets for the Wheel of Fortune. The player who saw this exclaimed that this was impossible. The Dark Emperor broke all records again. Another awakened one said that he passed the 10th floor too quickly. He even envied him. Meanwhile, in an unknown country, scientists gathered around the stove, which marked the beginning of a new era. An inscription appeared on the slab, and one of the scientists said that the world news seemed to have awakened the mechanism of the magic stone, and something appeared on it. It was written on the slab that when the first second-rank player on the 20th level blue star appears in the world, then tribulation-level disasters will begin to occur in many places in the world. One of them asked what this means. Will monsters from dungeons and secret worlds really appear in the real world? It seems that a disaster has come. He is afraid that their world will soon be engulfed in chaos, so they should all prepare for the worst. The woman who was among these scientists turned to her colleagues and asked if they could find the Dark Emperor. Meanwhile, the protagonist spent a ticket on the Wheel of Fortune and said that he hoped that with the ability of the Lord of Prayer, he could win something valuable. The arrows stopped on one of the sections, and the system congratulated him on receiving 10 prizes. He received 3 F rank and A rank life extension potions, as well as 2 life crystals, 1 cruelty crystal, 1 magic and a real one, and also an S rank space crystal. Lin Luo was happy and said that it was with the help of this space crystal that he could return to the real world. The real crystal is used directly, so the space crystal that returns to reality can be 7% more valuable. He will take 2 magic crystals for himself to improve his own strength and defense level, and he will give 2 life crystals to the Dark Emperor. He passed it to his double and he smashed it, increasing his strength by 5 points, defense by 4, and health by 80. MC climbed into his inventory and said that he still had 2 tickets for the Wheel of Fortune and 275 fragments of fate. The best thing to do is to collect 10 lottery tickets and then make a wish. He also needs to save up a few more fragments of fate so that he can later go to the store and exchange them for something useful. Before moving to the next level, he needs to sell all the equipment, because the sooner it is sold, the more expensive it will be. The currency in the game and in real life is slightly different. The current exchange rate for 1 in-game copper coin is from 5 to 6 yuan. Now the equipment is very expensive. For example, black iron level equipment costs several hundred gold coins. Considering that 1 copper coin is worth 6 yuan, he will put 2 high-level rare weapons, as well as high-level spells. For the beginner's ice staff, he will set the price at 2,300 gold coins, and for the rest 2,010 and 4,000 coins. As soon as he put these items up for sale, the system reported that his items were bought out in a matter of minutes. He received only 8,400 gold coins. The protagonist was very surprised and exclaimed that if you count in real money, it will be 5 million. In vain he underestimated the rich. It turned out stupid. He had to sell the items one by one. He decided not to be upset and said that cleaning the inventory was just a trifle. He was afraid that he would have to stay here all night to rise to level 20, and there would also be a transfer quest. When he got out of here, he would be able to obtain another Esther ability. The Smiling Coffin, the Great Tomb, and the Bucky Society were the 3 infamous clans that emerged after the chaotic era in his previous life. Bai Hongli, one of the 8 leaders of the 8 clan, did not carry an umbrella with him on a rainy night, but a knife. Among the 10 guardians of the Great Tomb, the Blood Witch Ji Wanning and the Ice Fury Lu Jiangning contributed the most to the clan's development. The leaders of the Smiling Coffin, Zhou Yu, Hu Jinming, and Wu Tao, were all masters who were able to awaken Esther abilities. After he was able to destroy them, he would be able to go to the City of Sin. This is a place where people torture each other, hate each other, and are full of evil people who can never atone for their sins even if they die 1,000 times. As for the ones who killed him and his brother, they were people hired by monsters who didn't reach S-rank abilities. Once he's done with the boss, he'll even go and destroy the people behind them. He'll avenge his past life. Meanwhile, a guy named Xing, who's in charge of the Crouching Tiger Villa in Hangzhou, was looking at something on his computer and said that China's anti-fraud methods are getting better and better. Nowadays, sending people to East Asia to work for money by scamming isn't as profitable as it used to be. But now that he's registered his company, he can really achieve great fame. First, he needs to recruit people in China, keep them busy for a while, and then force them to join teams. He laughed loudly and said that he was a genius, after which he heard the sound of notifications and looked at the phone screen, saying that another fat ram packed. If they collect enough, the network will be closed, the boss will definitely praise him. Meanwhile, MC found himself on the 11th floor of the Tower of Babel, in the Cave of Skeletons. His opponents were level 10 skeleton warriors, whose health is 1000, defense 100, attack power 90, and experience 83. They all have a passive skill called Rusty Strike. The swords in the hands of these evil spirits are rusty because they have been buried among the rotten warriors for a long time, which is why adventurers are forced to endure a decrease in health by 3 points every second after the battle with them. MC thought that on the first 10 floors of the Heavenly Tower, you can only get fragments of fate, and after passing these levels, you can already get some equipment. How he missed this. In his past life he spent a lot of time with his brother in the company of skeletons. He ordered the Dark Emperor to attack and leave no one behind. Hearing the order, his double smashed the skeletons into small bones, and suddenly a level 17 skeleton general appeared behind his master on horseback. The protagonist took out his dagger and thought with a smile, are they looking down on him because he is only level 13? Quickly slipping behind him, he plunged the blade into his bone and pierced through, then swung under his ribs, cutting off the upper part of his skeleton. His bones fell to the ground and the system reported that he passed the 11th floor of the Tower of Babel. He spent 1 minute 35 seconds to pass. As a reward, he receives 85 fragments of fate. MC looked at the bones under his feet with a smile and thought that he had 3 years of experience accumulated in his past life. So even in the underworld itself there are no creatures that can threaten him. Now he is going to reach the 20th floor in one breath. 8 minutes later, he finally reached the 20th floor and met with the skeleton lord of the 20th level, whose attack power is 250 points, defense 220, health 15,000, experience 2,500. His first skill, summoned from the underworld, summons an army of skeletons with weapons. The second skill, the Great Sword, accumulates energy for a strike that deals 400 points of physical damage and causes a killing effect on the target within a radius of 3 meters. Iron armor increases immunity to physical attacks by 5%. The Lord decided to start the fight using the first skill and swung his sword, loudly ordering his servants to rise up, let them leave the underworld and fight for him. Skeleton warriors and one general crawled out from under the ground, and Lin Luo prepared for battle and thought that there were more than 200 skeleton warriors here. The difficulty of this level far exceeds the previous 19 floors. The skeleton lord roared loudly, and his loyal warriors rushed to attack, meeting the fists of the Dark Emperor, who in an instant smashed their bones. Several dead skeletons fell to the ground and the Dark Emperor headed towards their lord, who, upon noticing him, swung his sword, but failed to strike. Meanwhile, his warriors surrounded the protagonist from all sides. He gritted his teeth and thought that it seemed that his abilities were not enough to defeat this army. There was a possibility that he would receive serious injuries. He called on the Lord of Prayers and his double appeared behind him, after which he said that he wanted the Dark Emperor to storm the next battle and strike with double force. Let him strike until the skeleton lord is completely defeated. The Lord of Prayers replied that his wish would be granted, after which MC turned around and thought in surprise, could he really wish for such a thing? Meanwhile, the Dark Emperor gained new powers and poured out a powerful stream of energy, showing his power. The skeleton lord looked up at him in bewilderment, and MC meanwhile dealt with several skeletons and ordered his double to go forward. Let him not worry, he will take care of himself. Hearing this, the Dark Emperor walked towards his opponent, and he prepared for a strike and raised his sword, after which an explosion was heard and dust rose. The skeleton lord laughed and said that he flew into pieces. This is what happens to those who cross him. The protagonist became nervous, but it was too late to admit defeat to his double. The ground beneath the skeleton's feet split, and he suddenly felt a burning gaze on the back of his head. A moment later, the Dark Emperor dealt him a powerful blow, and Lin Luo joyfully exclaimed that he knew it. His double knocked the enemy to the ground and began to punch him non-stop, gradually reducing his health. Seeing chips flying from the monster's head, Lin Luo thought, is this a powerful blow? After that, an explosion occurred that caused severe damage, and he thought that this was the most correct way to make a wish. Having cut through the skeleton, he joyfully exclaimed that he was torn to pieces, so this is his destiny. The Dark Emperor dealt the final blow and the system reported that he defeated the skeleton lord. As a reward he receives 700% to experience, and due to the ability of 100 battles, another 200% is added. He successfully passed the 20th floor of the Tower of Babel. It took 3 minutes 11 seconds to pass. Now he has reached the 14th floor. MC put his hand on his double's shoulder and told him to leave it, they have more important things to do. Meanwhile, the rest of the awakened ones saw the world news that the Dark Emperor has passed 20 floors alone. As a reward he gets 10 tickets of the Wheel of Fortune. Some of them exclaimed that this is too much. Will he really go even further? Someone asked why they ran into him. He was probably beaten half to death by now. Meanwhile, the protagonist has successfully passed the 21st floor and is heading to the next one. From the 21st to the 29th floor, the player goes through a labyrinth, but he uses the shortest route he remembers to speed up the passage. And all just for the sake of meeting the boss on the 30th floor early. He reached the gate leading to the 30th floor, and the system warned him that he has not reached a sufficient level to pass such a difficult mission. Let him come next time. He crossed his arms in displeasure and told the system not to give unnecessary advice, and then the Dark Emperor opened the gate and walked inside. In the center of the room stood the level 30 Minotaur King, and MC thought that he could finally use his active skill robbery. The king loudly put the golden hammer on the floor and, looking at his opponent, asked, "Is he level 15? What a stupid little human, does he even know what awaits him?" Lin Luo asked with a smile, "Is his labyrinth a real trap, is he right?" The Minotaur became wary, and MC, pointing his hand at him, said that he was ready to fight him, after which he ordered the Dark Emperor to act. The Minotaur King raised his hammer over his head and then struck, but the Dark Emperor managed to dodge. MC thought that in his past life he was convinced from his own experience that he should not quickly overcome the floors of life 21 to 29. Because the monsters that the players were fighting would be revived and would come to the king's call to support their boss. The Minotaur wanted to grab his opponent, but he managed to jump back in time, after which he hit the ground with his hammer several times, spreading sparks around. After watching the fight, Lin Luo thought that it was not the first generation of players to fall into a stupid trap, but he was not one of them. He had his own plan. He called the Lord of Prayers and told him to continue to help him and the Dark Emperor to strike with double force. He granted his wish, and immediately after that the Dark Emperor struck his opponent with blows that knocked off 450 units of health, after which he began to attack him continuously. The health of the Minotaur King almost reached zero, and he decided to call his warriors to protect him. Noticing this, MC realized that he was starting an attack, after which he stretched out his hand forward and, accumulating dark energy around himself, told his double that it was time for him to start too. The system reported that he had activated the Earthquake skill with a power of 30%. For activating the skill, 1,200 health points were deducted from him. He activated the Crazy Dance skill with a power of 30%, 106 attack points were gained. Finding himself under the oppression of the Dark Emperor's blows, the Minotaur King said that he was a vile little human, after which the double knocked him to the ground, and the system reported that he had activated the Royal Strike skill with a power of 30%. For activating it, 23 agility points were deducted from him. Lin Luo looked at his hands and with a wide smile on his face said that this feeling was so amazing. The system congratulated him on reaching level 18, and at the same time, monsters from the lower floors ran into the room, and MC, along with his double, turned around, saying that monsters from the underworld itself are rushing straight here. It seems they arrived just in time. He suddenly raised his hand and, swirling streams of energy around himself, told his warriors to retreat. Using the ability of the Minotaur King, he thought that he needed to check if he had chosen a good ability. Hearing the order, the Minotaurs immediately threw down their weapons, and their eyes opened wider and glowed brightly, as if they were hypnotized. The protagonist looked at them with a smirk and waved his hand slightly, after which the Minotaurs bowed their heads to him. Meanwhile, in the beginner dungeon of the Secret Mushroom Kingdom, a man named Tai Ro was wandering around and taming monsters. Using his power, he said that he would make them kneel before him, after which the 8th level Mushroom King submitted to his desire. Yu Taijie, who suddenly approached him from behind, clapped his hands and said that he finally found an opponent worthy of his SS rank Emperor's Eye skill. He had heard a lot about him. He thought that he would definitely defeat the Dark Emperor with his help. Tai Ro turned around and asked in surprise, who the hell was he? Why wasn't he afraid of his Emperor Eye ability? He introduced himself to him and said that he was a man who lived outside of time. The very man who could make him stronger. He extended his hand to Tai Ro and he looked at it hesitantly, asking why he came to him. Yu Taijie took his hand and replied with a confident smile that it was because he really needed his help. After all, he could make any creature kneel. Meanwhile, Lin Luo also made the Minotaurs kneel and they said goodbye to him, calling him king, and he summoned the Dark Emperor and told him to come out. As soon as his double appeared, he immediately rushed towards the Minotaurs and, hitting the ground with his fist, scattered them in all directions and dust rose. Lin Luo turned away and cleared his throat, saying that there was so much dust here. After that, the system congratulated him on reaching the 20th level and passing the 30th floor, which he spent 16 minutes and 29 seconds on. The system announced his achievement to the rest of the awakened ones and, as he was leaving the tower, he heard many surprised voices of people around him, asking who this Dark Emperor was. He grinned confidently and thought that now he could reach a completely different level. Time passed. After such a long cleansing, he decided to have a snack and went into a cafe. While chewing his food, he thought that the second level dungeon would be more difficult than the one he had gone through. He couldn't use the experience from his previous life there, so he needed to eat and drink well first. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the side. Zhang Wei slapped a girl named Qin Xiaomei in the face and exclaimed that a priest like her was simply useless. He recognized these people and thought that they seemed to be his former colleagues. He remembered them discussing him and his brother and thought that they were just a bunch of thugs, the boss's thugs. They had been working against him for a long time. The girl called Zhang Wei captain and apologized to him, saying that she didn't mean it. He kicked her and asked if there was any point in apologizing. It was because of her that Xiao Jia died. She cried out in pain, and MC, continuing to eat calmly, thought, is there a missing person? It seems that he is already dead. One of the men asked the cafe owner for 3 bowls of noodles and some signature dishes, and the captain told the others to bring the girl here to treat her wounds. Another man hit her and told her to get up immediately. Is she pretending to be dead or something? She replied that when the general manager was here, he didn't treat her like that. He ran his finger over the wound on her face and asked, does she still think of herself as the boss? And where is he now? She remained silent, and he thought that the general manager would always live in their hearts, then grabbed her by the clothes and dragged her to the table, saying that she used to be the boss's dog, but now she is theirs. MC thought that some of them were once on very good terms, but now their world has changed and their attitude towards each other has changed. She began to heal the wounds on the captain's leg, and one of them said that now that Xiao Jia is dead, they are short of people in the squad. What should they do? Another man said that they need to hurry up and choose another player. They need to pass the second level of the Tower of Babel. Zhang Wei was about to start eating, but suddenly stopped when he noticed a familiar face. He walked up to Lin Luo, holding a plate of food in his hands, and said that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Hearing his name, Xiao Mei became very excited, and the captain sat closer to his former colleague and asked where he had been since everyone had awakened. He missed him so much. He handed him a plate of food and told him to eat well and not to sigh so heavily. What ability had awakened? It would help him earn a lot of money. Otherwise, how could he be worthy of someone like Wen Yuqi? He remembered how he had offered him the same thing in his previous life and thought that he had been detained for 10 days for beating up his boss back then. But when he went outside, Zhang Wei contacted him. He told him all the details of his talent, but he took it as a joke and began to make fun of him with his friends. He stood up from his seat and replied that he was not looking for a team, and Zhang Wei asked in surprise, was he going through everything alone? He stood up after him and asked with a smirk, does he want to become a big boss like the Dark Emperor? Seeing Ling Luo leaving, Xiao Mei rushed to him and grabbed his leg. With tears in her eyes, she asked him to save her. She would let him do everything. She put his hand on her chest and asked him to take her with him, but he immediately pulled his hand back and said that she was mistaken. He was not looking for a partner. Zhang Wei was very angry at her behavior and began to insult her, then grabbed her hair and exclaimed, she tries to seduce everyone she meets, right? She doesn't need Ling Luo. Does he have the strength to save her? She screamed in pain and the man laughed, said that she thought he had a high level of ability. He was sure that his strength was not even as high as his. His buddy smirked and asked, isn't he the brother of the thief who received alms from the Wen family? What kind of power could two trash have? Their family just pities him. How shameless do you have to be to still be interested in their daughter? Zhang Wei said that if he knew that the Wen family would pity and ask for two trash, he would have immediately stolen something. Who knows, maybe he will also have a romantic relationship with Wen Yuqi. He laughed loudly and Ling Luo said with a gloomy expression that he would not advise him to say that. Zhang Wei looked up at him and asked what exactly? He got closer to his face and asked, is it living off someone else's or being a freeloader? He overestimates himself too much. The protagonist's fist clenched and he was about to release the Dark Emperor, but he held back. Zhang Wei walked over to his guys and said that this idiot does not understand that times have already changed. Now they will show him what the world of fists is. One of them confidently clenched his fist and said that he had just gotten something from the dungeon, so he could try it. His friend said that their fists had passed the dungeon tests, they had killed people with them. After that, they pounced on the MC, telling him not to think that the inspector would save him. If he didn't want to die, then he should kneel down and beg them nicely. When one of the men's fists landed right in front of the protagonist's face, he suddenly pulled back, then struck back, immediately knocking both men aside. He thought that he had lived these two lives and knew better than them what the world of fists was. Xiao Mei looked at him in surprise and said that this was incredible. Zhang Wei looked at his beaten comrades and exclaimed, he can't be defeated by two strong players? He took out a knife from his jacket and then pounced on Lin Luo with the intention of killing him. And when he swung his hand, he jumped back and hit him in the chin, and then kicked him, throwing him aside. His comrades were very worried about him and Lin Luo, shaking off the dust from his hands, thought that they were just a group of weaklings, so he didn't even want to get his hands dirty. Zhang Wei's friends asked, is Lin Luo really that strong? What level of ability did he awaken? Probably level A or S? They looked at each other and immediately knelt down in front of him, asking, does he need anyone else on the team? They are willing to do all the dirty work. He replied that he already told them, he doesn't need a team, but they don't believe him. They bowed even more deeply and asked him for forgiveness, they made a mistake. Meanwhile, the man named by Hong Li sitting on the second floor lifted the blinds and thought that he couldn't believe that there was such a strong man in this small noodle shop. He ordered his subordinate to find a smart person to keep an eye on this boy. Bai Hong Li is one of the 8 founders of the Great 8 clan, who awakened with an S-level ability. The protagonist meanwhile ordered the guys to kneel down. They can stand up as soon as Zhang Wei wakes up. Did they all understand? They confirmed his words and he headed for the exit, and Xiao Mei looked at him and thought that a man like him was just her dream. This man was so strong. She crawled towards him and grabbed his pants, saying that she could be a little rude before, but her boss forced her to do so. She knows he's not angry with her. She's right? MC pinched his nose with his fingers in displeasure and asked her to calm down, but she ignored it and pressed his palm to her face, asking him to take her with him. She would make it up to him tenfold. He pulled his hand back and told her to at least respect herself, then left her and walked away. She watched him go with a gloomy expression and thought, did that trash leave again? She was not a bad player, and she wanted to be with him because she thought he was a good person. Jiang Wei's friends noticed her mood and one of them asked, "Does she think you can seduce anyone?" Their Captain Lin only has Miss Wen Yuqi in his heart, she had better not take risks. She turned around and shouted at him, "What's wrong with her? How is she worse than that woman?" They laughed and said that she was not worth a finger, she was definitely low class. She started emitting an ominous aura from you and told them to say it again. Despite this, they stood up and said with smiles that Lin Luo was gone, no one would protect her anymore. One of them suddenly remembered that his new captain had hit him so hard that he had lost all his strength and became nervous, and Xiao Mei noticed his trembling legs and thought with a smirk that this was her chance to take revenge. After that, she slapped him in the face with her hand and exclaimed that all the kindness he had given her, she would return in full. She began to beat him furiously and asked where he got the strength to resist. He must be looking for death. He screamed loudly, and Bai Hongli, watching this spectacle with a smile, said that this girl was very unusual. His subordinate also looked at her and agreed with him, and he said that he needed to invite her to the team, otherwise the brothers were complaining that they lacked female players. His subordinate agreed and thanked him, after which he said that he needed to ask her about the guy who was there, he needed to find his weak spot. The man agreed and went to the first floor, where in the meantime the enraged woman finished beating up the men and said that sooner or later she would step on Lin Luo in the same way. A man approached her from behind and, handing her a book, asked if she had ever heard of the Society of Eight. She asked if it was a very famous team of players. He replied that they were looking for good players. Would she like to join them? She did not let him finish and with a smile on her face exclaimed that of course this was what she dreamed of. She took the book from his hands and with a smirk put her signature, thinking that if Lin Luo knew that she was now in a big guild. This was the difference between a commoner and a rich man. The man smiled and calling her Miss Jean said that from now on they were one family. She asked him to just call her by her first name since he was older. Now calling her cutie, he asked who was the guy who just left. He thought he was really rude to her. She wiped away the tears that were forming and said that he used to be on her team but he loved to play with other people's feelings so much. He asked if he had any weak spots? Maybe their team could get revenge on him for her. She thought for a second, and then said Wen Yuqi's name with a gloomy expression. Meanwhile, MC was slowly walking down the street and the person following him said that he was heading towards the city's eastern square. His interlocutor asked him not to let him go, and he continued to follow. Hiding around the corner, the man told him on the phone that he had some good news for him. The captain asked him to go down to that girl, so their brothers would be excited. He laughed and the stalker said that, like a real captain, he knew what his brothers needed. Meanwhile, the protagonist had long noticed the surveillance, and wondered what this guy needed. The man told the stalker that this girl told about Lin Luo's main weakness, a woman named Wen Yuqi. The captain wanted to subdue him, so she could be the key to keeping this guy. After he determined his next move, let him pay attention to someone named Wen Yuqi. He replied that he understood, then walked out from behind the corner and followed Lin Luo. But suddenly he turned around and he flinched. Lin Luo looked at him with a smirk and wondered who the brave man was, and then walked past him and wondered if they had met before? He didn't remember him. His follower became very nervous and moved on so as not to arouse suspicion, but suddenly a strong aura appeared behind him. The Dark Emperor slapped him in the face and slammed his back into the wall, after which Lin Luo walked up to him and asked who sent him. The guy replied that he was mistaken, he was just passing by. MC took off his hood and said that he had been watching him since he came out of the noodle shop. And this, in his opinion, was just passing by. He noticed the earrings on his ears and wondered if he was from the 8 clan. According to the events in his past life, the 8 clan should not have appeared in front of him so early. He said that he only had one chance to answer what he was planning. The pursuer exclaimed that he said that he was passing by, he does not even know him. The protagonist began to get angry and thought that the soldiers of the 8 clan are known for their cruelty, but it seems that this is an ordinary guy, so continuing the interrogation is a waste of time. He called the Lord of Prayers and said that he had a wish. He wants him to explain why he was pursuing him. The Lord of Prayers granted his wish and the pursuer, as if under hypnosis, said that his name is Sun Lang, he is a member of the 8 clan, is under the leadership of General Baek Hung Yeo. They have a beauty, she is also a player. Lin Luo was interested in this and he continued, saying that this beauty told them everything about one of the best players. His name is Lin Luo. The captain ordered him to keep an eye on him, and then he was assigned to investigate the case of a man named Wen Yuqi. Hearing this, Lin Luo rubbed his chin thoughtfully, thinking, did the 8 clan take Qin Xiaomei in? The pursuer continued, saying that this Wen Yuqi is Lin Luo's greatest weakness. The captain plans to use her to blackmail him. He wants him to become a warrior of the clan. Now Lin Luo realized that Xiaomei had told everything about him, and thought that this vicious girl had really caused him big trouble. In his past life, in the 3rd year after the disaster began, when Hongli killed Sister Wen, he wanted to avenge her death and constantly risked his life to improve his abilities. What a pity that he ended up dying at the hands of a monster. In this life, he must first kill Bai Hongli before the 8 clan finds her. The Dark Emperor dealt with his pursuer, and he said that now he needs to get rid of the body. His double put the corpse in some kind of jar, after which MC turned to the prayer log and asked if he wished for the 8 clan to not attack Wen Yuqi. How long would it take for his wish to come true? He replied that given his current abilities, he could say that it would take no more than 24 hours. Lin Luo thought that he should have time to change his profession before he could confidently go and kill Bai Hongli. He replied that 24 hours would be enough and asked him to grant his wish, saying that first he needed to go to the second part of the secret world passage. Sometime later, in the secret world of the League of Assassins, MC walked up to a huge crystal in the middle of the street and thought that it was surprisingly quiet here. He didn't even know what to expect, but he hoped that everything would go smoothly. He came very close to the crystal and a white flame swirled around him, after which he found himself in another space. There he was met by Desmond Miles, a professional mentor of the second-level assassins, a retired thief. Sitting on the sofa, he greeted the adventurer with a smile and said that he felt the power inside him. Is he ready to explore the secrets of the high level? Lin Luo thought that he saw a familiar face and heard familiar words again. He said with a smile that he was ready, and so he came to his mentor for instructions. Desmond opened a portal and told him to go to the snow field and find 30 snowman horns and 1 king penguin beak. There are many dangers on the snowy plains. He hopes that he will return alive. The protagonist began to teleport and replied that he will return, after which he found himself in the middle of a snowy field and thought that the level of this secret world is really much higher than the level of the second part of the dungeon. Something crawled out from under the snow behind him and he, feeling someone's presence, became worried. A level 20 black snowman appeared behind him, which immediately attacked him, and at that time he turned around and thought, could this monster really be in the dungeon? Would it have enough strength to attack him? He called the Dark Emperor, who immediately stopped the snowman's fist, and MC looked closely at the monster, noticing where exactly the sharp horn was. He ordered the Emperor to attack and he began to deliver many quick blows and eventually knocked the snowman to the ground. His body began to melt, and only the horn remained in the shapeless mass. Lin Luo was glad that they succeeded, and while he was getting the horn, the Dark Emperor noticed something to the side. He followed his gaze and saw that many of the same snowmen had crowded around them. Their bodies began to grow fur and MC was surprised by this, after which he took out a blade and said that this is where the real battle begins. He asked the Dark Emperor, is he ready? He confirmed his words and he said that they are slow enough, so attacking together they will definitely win. His double replied that he understood, after which they both rushed to attack and Lin Luo said that it would be good if they also dropped a sharp horn. Lunging forward, he pierced the monster's body and received 1 horn, and then looked up and saw that another monster swung at that moment. The Dark Emperor quickly reacted and, jumping high, parried the monster's fist, and Lin Luo cut off his other hand. Left without 2 limbs, the monster froze in bewilderment, and MC rushed to attack, asking the Dark Emperor for help. He put his hands together and his master, pushing off from them, jumped high and with a confident smile clenched his hand into a fist, after which he cut the monster's body in half and got 1 horn from it. When he landed, he plunged the blade into the ice and cracks went around the area, causing the other monsters to lose their balance. The protagonist told the Emperor to take advantage of this moment, and he went forward, waving his fists furiously. He pierced the head of one monster through and through, delivering a fatal blow, and it fell to the ground. The double at this time was already fighting another monster. He left a huge hole in its body, and then moved on to the next one and finished off the rest. Thus, MC collected 37 snowman horns and, looking at the other monsters that appeared from under the snow again and again, he thought that these snowmen were some kind of strange. They kill them, but they still do not end. What's the matter? It was all about the level 20 Penguin King, who sat on his throne and watched the fight, saying that these people were so impudent. Now he would show them how to kill. Taking a sip of alcohol, he raised the glass up and told his subjects to rise up, after which a drop of water jumped out from under the snowdrift in front of Lin Luo and he grabbed it, asking what is this? Several of the same drops from under the snow rose into the air and headed towards the penguin, gathering into one large ball above his head. He ordered the dark snowman to wake up and several ice floes shot out of the ball, which fell into a huge hole in the ice, forming a snowdrift there. After that, a huge snowman jumped out from under the water and MC thought, has he now gathered all his strength to summon one? Seeing where the ice floes were shooting from, he suddenly remembered that this monster is impossible to kill. After slipping under the snowman's feet, he ordered the Dark Emperor to follow him and ran up the hill where the Penguin King sat. His double placed him on his shoulder and sped up, while the king began calling the snowmen again, telling them to rise up. Lin Luo asked his double to throw him to the top and he agreed, and then threw him forward with all his might. In flight, MC took out a blade, and as soon as he approached the penguin, he swung and dealt one powerful blow, killing him. Having received the beak after his death, he said with a smile that the task was completed, and then turned his gaze to the field, which was littered with the remains of snowmen, and said that it was time to return. He returned to the mentor and handed him the items, and he said that he now admitted that he was strong. He showed him 3 cards and said that these were 3 specializations for the assassin, noble robber, windrunner and apostle of darkness. But that's not all, there are also secret specializations. Does he want to get it? Lin Luo confirmed his words and thought that he was only here for them, after which the man with a mysterious look said that if he changed the specialization incorrectly, he would die. Does he still want it? The protagonist was not afraid of the risk and answered with a smile that he would do it even if he had to die. Hearing the answer, Desmond laughed and said that he was the first one who was so eager for this. Lin Luo thought that in a past life, people could get a hidden profession, so he could too. The man stretched out his hands towards him, saying that it was too late to regret, there was no way back either. He was sending him into the void. There he would find what he wanted. Let him not be shy and choose what he likes. While he was saying this, MC had already found himself in another space. He saw a myriad of stars around him and immediately covered his face with his hand from the bright light, wondering, is this the void? There really is nothing here. He decided to walk, but suddenly stumbled on some platform and a red beam of light shot out of it into the sky. In surprise, he recoiled back and, seeing two more beams of light of different colors nearby, said that now he understood everything. He touched the red beam and a system window appeared in front of him with a description of the profession dissident. Specializations, impunity, fusion of good and evil. This adds 2 units to strength and endurance, and 6 to agility. After reading this, he thought that this was what the Lord of Prayers recommended to him. He walked away, deciding to check other professions, and touched the blue beam, reading the description. The profession is Shadow, Specializations, Shadow Division, Fusion with Shadow, and also the Curse of the Shadow. Adds 3 units to strength and endurance, and also 10 to agility. He thought that this profession is better than the first one. It turns out that the light of the beam means its coolness. He turned to the golden beam and thought that then this is the best option. After touching it, he saw a description of the legendary profession Storm Swordsman. Specializations, Supersonic Sword, Hurricane of Swords and Sword Spirit. Adds 4 to strength, 2 to stamina, and 4 to agility. MC was surprised that this was a legendary profession and thought that he had never heard of it in his past life. If he got this, he would be able to fight back against the 8 clan. But what's the catch? Suddenly, an idea came to his mind and he wondered why the Lord of Prayer hid this from him. He ordered him to appear and his double immediately appeared next to him. The protagonist sighed at the thought that it was hard to trust a liar, and then turned around and asked with a displeased look why he deceived him. The Lord of Prayer looked away and asked why he would deceive him? A dissident would definitely suit him. This was the right choice. He became nervous and Lin Luo thought that he was so selfish, and then ordered him to show the success rate of mastering the Storm Swordsman. The Lord of Prayer replied that the chance of mastering the skills was only 1%, and getting a profession was generally 0.5. Lin Luo thought that it was a bit low, and then asked him to look at the shadow. The ability mastering chance was 22%, and the job change success rate was 9. Based on this, he replied that it was already better than the swordsman, but it was still not enough. Then MC asked how much the dissident had? The Lord of Prayer showed him the system window, which said that the ability mastering chance was 89% and the job change success rate was 98. He asked him to look at it, and said that this was definitely the safest choice. Lin Luo agreed and said that there would definitely be no problem with this, and the Lord, already happy that he was starting to lean towards choosing this profession, thanked him for realizing it. Despite the high chance, MC did not want this profession and asked who told him that he needed the safest choice when the most effective one was needed. The Lord of Prayer didn't understand what he meant, and his master suddenly approached him and said that he hoped he would remember that when he asked to see the options, he didn't have to choose them for him. Is everything clear to him? He nervously confirmed his words, and seeing that he was heading towards the golden beam, he excitedly called out to him. But he interrupted him and said that he had one more question. If the chance of mastering is 1%, will he be able to get the most out of this profession? The Lord confirmed his words and said that once he changed this, he would gain 100% of the potential. But if something goes wrong, at best, his strength will be weakened for about 20 days, and at worst. After the last word, he fell silent and Ling Luo asked, he will die, right? The Lord confirmed his master's words and he said that it really doesn't matter whether he loses his strength or dies, he will be abandoned by others. He thought that the most important thing is that he won't be able to save Wen Yuqi. The Lord of Prayer wanted to say something, but suddenly Lin Luo raised his hand to his face and asked, although he is smart, but in his calculations he forgot about him, right? After that he smiled and said that he will make a wish, and then walked towards the golden beam of light and said that he wishes for success in mastering this profession. His double was happy and exclaimed that he understood everything, it was all part of his plan. He waved his hand, saying that he will fulfill his wish, and MC meanwhile sat inside the beam and the system reported that the success rate increased to 100%. He smiled and thought, did it work? Streams of energy swirled around him, after which he returned back to the room to Desmond and he, seeing a strong aura around him, exclaimed that this is the Sword of the Storm, the rarest profession. Did he really choose this? Even those with SSS rank cannot master this. What will happen next? A few minutes ago, when the protagonist was just accepting the profession, a voice appeared in his head that said that if he wanted to gain the power of the Storm's sword, then he needed to understand the true essence of the storm and death. A golden glow entered his body and he suddenly opened his eyes, seeing in front of him the image of a swordsman playing the flute. The voice said that loyalty to the wind, sword and heart will fall along with him. But throwing aside the fear of death, relying on his heart, the wind will keep it and become a sword, a sharp stream, striking hurricanes forever. Only by meeting face to face with death, he will be able to overcome this. The only and invincible sword of the storm. These images disappeared and the Lord of Prayers said that he had no strength left and he would again plunge into a deep sleep. Let him remember, he can only rely on himself. After that, the golden ray of light disappeared and he lost consciousness, fell onto the platform. At the moment, when he had just emerged from the void, he fell unconscious right at Desmond's feet and did not open his eyes anymore. The mentor said that he knew it, this was his retribution. The system reported that the only owner of the second specialization in the world was born. It solemnly repeated this message several more times, and Desmond said that only a couple of seconds had passed. If he had not complicated everything, he would have been the only one in the world. What a pity that he had already been surpassed. Seeing that Lin Luo had opened his eyes, he was very surprised, and then he looked up at him and said with a smile that he was the only one in the world. The man was very surprised and asked, "Did everything really work out?" From shock, he dropped his cigarette and sat down on the sofa, and seeing that he was drinking something, he asked, "Is this a full recovery potion?" Maybe thanks to this he was able to get a profession. Having finished the treatment, Lin Luo wiped his mouth and looked at him with a confident smile, and he told him to answer. Why did everything work out for him? But instead of answering, MC looked down at his feet and said that he was burning. The cigarette burned through the carpet, and a flame burst into flames, after which the man jumped up from the sofa and began to put out the fire with his foot, shouting that it was so hot. At this time, Lin Luo turned to the exit and, looking at him one last time, thought that he did not have time for him. The Lord of Prayer had fallen asleep, and after he killed Bai Hongli, he would have to speed up. When he went outside, he looked at the sky and thought that it was already dark. It took a whole 5 hours. Looking at the phone screen, he thought that he had to kill him in 19 hours. Seeing the notification of 4 new messages, he opened the correspondence with Xiao Mei, who thanked him for helping them. She wants to thank him, so she invites him to eat. Tomorrow at noon, let him come to the restaurant opposite the station. After reading this, he thought, is she always this caring? Is this all because of the clan of 8? He wrote her a message back and thought that he couldn't wait until tomorrow, so he needed to choose a suitable place to meet today. Meanwhile, Xiao Mei and Hongli were enjoying their time alone. While sitting on top of him, she said that he was the only one who was so passionate and strong. They finally made it. Suddenly, her phone rang, notifying her of new messages, and Hongli picked it up. She asked him not to be distracted and offered to continue, and he said that it was Lin Luo, who was writing something. Seeing that he wanted to meet at the East Bay today, he said that there was a change in plans. Quickly putting on his clothes, he headed for the exit and told her to quickly get ready, they needed to go there. Feeling annoyed that tonight was a failure, she began to curse Lin Luo in her thoughts. He always ruins everything for her. Meanwhile, a new message appeared on the monolith. After midnight, a disaster will occur. The first holder of 2 professions will appear. The man who read this asked the teacher standing next to him what this could mean. He replied that if the monolith predicted everything correctly, then a terrible catastrophe awaits them. They need to prepare for this. The man replied that he understood, and the protagonist meanwhile came to the meeting place. He received a notification on his phone about a curfew. Tomorrow from 8 p.m. a general curfew will begin. Residents are prohibited from leaving their homes. Let them wait for further instructions. MC thought that a curfew was announced for the first time, probably because of the impending disaster. But this time for some reason it happened 5 days earlier. The first wave was an invasion of monstrous insects with levels from 1 to 20. For the awakened, this was the moment when you could get 4 times more experience for 1 kill, so many guilds were able to level up well. Unlike last time, this will be much more dangerous. For this they fought for 15 days in a row. He didn't protect anyone who helped him in his previous life, he just dragged them along with him. After all, he can protect everyone now. He lay on the ground and remembered how he smashed his face when he was a child and thought that he was so stupid back then. Seeing the blood on his face, Yuchi grabbed his hand and took him home to heal his wounds, and after that, she told him that he would be able to heal himself once he learned how. He agreed with her, and happily said that he would need her anyway. When her family found out that their brother was stealing from them, they didn't get angry and took him in. Yuchi was present at all the important moments of his life. She was there for his graduation and wished him a good future. However, when she needed his protection, he was not there. It was all because of Bai Hongli. Clenching his hand into a fist, he gritted his teeth in rage and thought that he would soon finish him off. Meanwhile, his car was driving towards the bay. They were heading to the meeting place in silence, and suddenly his phone rang. He became very nervous when he saw a familiar name on the screen, then answered the call and the man called him Kitasawa, which is his middle name. Noticing the change in his mood, Xiao Mei thought, is there anyone for such a strong man like Master to be afraid of? The man on the phone said that Princess Yoshiko and Miyamoto's engagement will be next month, let him prepare. Miyamoto has awakened an SSS rank ability, so they think he can take back his country. S-rank ability holders need to quickly collect power crystals to increase their levels. Hongli became nervous and replied that he understood, and then looked at his trembling hands and thought, how dare this Miyamoto Musashi steal from him? Princess Yoshiko is his, and the clan of 8 in the future is also his. He needs to find all the crystals to rise to SSS rank by the end of the month. Lin Luo is capable enough that he can force him to look for crystals for him. He called out to Xiao Mei and said that he was handing over a group of brothers to her to keep an eye on Yuchi. While they were keeping an eye on her, Lin Luo would be forced to work for them. She agreed and he said that it was better for him to remain in the shadows for now, so let her meet Lin Luo, but she was not allowed to tell him anything about him. She agreed and told him not to worry, she would definitely bring him to them. He called her a smart girl and said that she already knew everything. Arriving at the right place, Xiao Mei noticed Lin Luo resting on the ground and thought that she had already dealt with the clan leader, so she was sure that she could handle him too. Quickly putting on a sweet smile, she skipped towards the protagonist and started calling him, saying that she was coming to him. Hearing her voice, he immediately stood up and looked at her with a puzzled expression, and then she suddenly tripped and fell right in front of him. After which she looked at him with a displeased look and said that it was because of him that she fell. It was so painful for her. He gave her a displeased look and asked whereby Hongli was now. She became nervous, realizing that he knew the name of the clan leader, and then pretended not to understand anything and asked what he was talking about. He suddenly approached her face and said Hongli's name, saying that he was the clan leader of the 8. She looked away and said that she really joined this clan, but she had never met the clan leader in person, she had only heard his name. He took her phone and stepped aside, telling her not to fool him. She stood up and asked him to listen to her. She really had never met Hongli, but she asked to be accepted into the 8 clan. He silently dialed Hongli's number on the phone, and she said that the clan of 8 is a great option, and he can join them. He will have everything, money, connections. He got through to the head of the clan and he answered the call, saying that she had long been assigned to keep an eye on Lin Luo. Why is she calling only now? MC replied with a smile that it was because he had just killed her. Hearing his voice, Hongli exclaimed in surprise, was it really him? MC told him to come out of the shadows. He knew that he was somewhere here. After that, he ended the call and Hongli nervously looked at the phone screen. Meanwhile, the protagonist threw the phone into the sea and Xiao Mei asked, did he really know everything from the beginning? He replied that he knew everything, and then the laughter of the clan head was heard behind him, who said that this was to be expected. He had chosen a truly outstanding talent. Let him join their great clan and he will lead him to the top. Lin Luo's face darkened for a moment and he asked, is he talking about his plan to rebuild the country? He called Hongli by his middle name and he nervously asked, how does he know that? MC took out his blade and said that all of them, just people, each of them will die. He summoned the Dark Emperor and he immediately went into battle, dealing several powerful blows, but hit the shield that Hongli's double erected in time. He jumped back and, calling her Kagaya, ordered her to protect him. She replied that she understood him, and then the Dark Emperor rushed towards her, but she dodged in time and avoided the subsequent attacks with the help of her shield. The double continued to stubbornly strike, and Lin Luo thought that he could not believe how she could keep up with the speed of the Dark Emperor, so she also has a high level of defense. The Emperor stepped back and he said that it was a good tactic, but once the master died, his double would instantly lose his powers, so their plan failed. Hongli laughed and said that he couldn't even break through his double's defense. How was he going to kill him? The protagonist became nervous and thought that he wouldn't be able to hold back his powers for long. They had to destroy him as soon as possible. Meanwhile, his opponent also began to get a little nervous and thought that although Kagaya was not hurt, her power level had dropped a lot. If she changed into another form, the probability of defeating the opponent would be high. They both thought that they had to finish the fight immediately. Hongli ordered Kagaya to switch to Rainy Night mode and change her shield to a sword to kill his double. MC at this time called for the Lord of Prayers and said that the clan leader should no longer dodge the Dark Emperor's blows. He granted his wish with a smile, after which Kagaya lunged forward, but the Emperor paid no attention to her and Hongli thought that he was now his target. Even if she struck him, he would still attack him. He nervously looked up at the towering duplicate of his opponent and said that he would fight him then, they would see who was faster. He called out to Kagaya and ordered her to switch to the master of the duplicate, and she lunged forward, and the Dark Emperor meanwhile hit Hongli on the head, throwing him several meters to the side. Kagaya meanwhile was right above Ling Luo and had already raised her sword over her head, and her master wiped the blood from his face and laughed, asking how dare he think that a fist is stronger than their sword. His duplicate struck a blow that raised dust, but she suddenly froze in place in surprise, not seeing her opponent. The head of the 8 clan exclaimed, how is this possible? Can an ordinary person really have such a reaction speed? The protagonist, who was already behind him, said that he recognized that he was different from others. He had fast reflexes and was very good at controlling his double. At that moment, the Dark Emperor appeared right in front of the enemy and clenched his hand into a fist, then delivered a fatal blow, and MC said that it was a pity that only the victor survived in this world. He looked at Hongli's corpse and said that in his past life, he was unable to avenge Sister Wen's death. He stretched out his hand towards him and used the ability robbery, and then the system said that he could choose one of 4 values for robbery: attributes, talent, ability, and soul power. MC thought that his innate ability was not very strong, so now he needed more talents of S rank and above. He chose ability robbery and the system congratulated him on obtaining the Rainy Night of S rank. Streams of energy swirled around him, summoning his new doppelganger, and the system reported that the ability had 3 effects. In rainy weather, the umbrella can protect him from detection. At night, it can cause celestial phenomena, creating a small area of rain. When using the ability, attack speed will increase by 10%. Kagaya appeared in front of him, and the system reported her stats. Strength 120, Agility 200, Intelligence and Defense 30, Health 4500, Energy 180. Energy recovery time, 1 point per 10 minutes. Height 130, range 20 meters. When using Rainy Night and changing weapons to an umbrella, defense increases by 400 points. When Kagaya uses a sword, her attacks deal 200 points of damage and consume 2 energy points per second. Energy consumption is reduced by 50%, and there is no recharge. The doppelganger greeted its new master, and he thought that once the Rainy Night talent is used in tandem with the doppelganger, not only the defense level will increase, but also the attack level. Her attack speed is far superior to the Dark Emperor. It is a true balance of offense and defense. Moreover, her intelligence has reached 30, and she can fight on her own, while the Dark Emperor's intelligence does not exceed 1 unit. He wished them a pleasant cooperation with a smile, and she bowed to him, telling him not to worry, she will protect him until her last breath. Meanwhile, a stream of energy rose into the air from Hong Li's corpse, and Lin Luo said that there is a chance that when he kills an enemy, he will be able to obtain the items that were in his inventory. He wonders what he will get. A watch appeared in his hand, and he said in surprise that it is a ticket for the Wheel of Fortune. He got it just in time, so he can win the items he wants. He called out to the Lord of Prayers and looked around, asking, has he woken up yet? It seems that the previous wishes had absorbed too much energy, now it can't be summoned. He remembered that in the secret area in the center of the sacred place in the forest, there were rare items that restored energy. Kagai asked, will they go to the secret world now? He replied that they should go to a more important place first. Meanwhile, Princess Yoshiko Keiko was sitting in her room, nervously biting her nails, because she couldn't get through to Hong Li. She looked at her phone screen with anxiety and asked, what happened? He never turned off his phone. Her maid entered the room and said that the elders had arranged a meeting with Lord Miyamoto Musashi. She turned around and thought that these old people were trying to force her to marry some warrior to restore their country. She looked sadly out the window, thinking that she would have been happy if he hadn't come back. She and Hong Li lived in China for almost a year. It was one of the happiest periods of her life. If Hong Li were here, he would definitely take her, and they would run away. She called him again, but his number was unavailable, and she thought, where is he now? Meanwhile, the protagonist approached a rich house and looked at the light in the windows with the thought that Hong Li is one of the leaders of the clan of 8. If he discovered his death, there would be a real commotion. The clan will be busy searching for killers, and all this time, Sister Wen will be safe. Kagai approached him and asked, does her master really like this girl? That is, she can call her his girlfriend? He became embarrassed and replied that of course it is not so, and she smiled and asked, maybe she is his future girlfriend. He spent the whole night here, so it seems to her that she is very important to him. He looked at the house with a smile and replied that she is right, she is very important to him. He remembered his one brother and sister, and thought that in this life he must become stronger to protect his loved ones. He will never let the mistakes of his previous life happen again. He walked forward along the street with a gloomy face and told the double to follow him, and she asked where? He replied that they were sending them to the Holy Land, there they would increase their power level. After a while, he approached the crystal and told 2 guards that he needed to go through. One of them asked, is he strong enough? This secret world has a high level of danger, it requires level 30 or higher. If he enters, he will not be able to exit in the middle of the mission. He replied that he knows it. The guard asked him to share his personal information, and the protagonist handed him an envelope, from which a system window appeared, which told them about his identity. Seeing his nickname, the man said that this name is so popular now. His colleague asked in surprise, is he the Dark Emperor that was on the world news? MC left the question unanswered and asked if he could come in. The guard agreed and, seeing the girl next to him, whispered in his ear that he shouldn't take his own life just to show off in front of the girl. Any person can only be resurrected 3 times, so he should save his life. He thanked him and replied that he was confident enough, and then entered the portal, and the guard said that people like him should be called heroes. After some time of fighting on the holy ground, Kagai rose to level 8, as she was able to kill 8 level 30 monsters. For this, MC received 1,260,000 experience points. His double masterfully wielded the sword, cutting one slime after another. After piercing the monster's body, she swung the sword several times, cutting the rest in the area, and MC said that it was good that he took her with him. He lay down more comfortably on the lounge chair and continued to watch the fight, saying that he thought she understood the rules of the game. After finishing with all the monsters around, she hid the sword and took out an umbrella, then went to the master and said that she killed all the enemies in this area. He stood up and praised her with a smile, saying that the essence of the mission in this world is to help the elves protect their settlement from foreigners. The fragments of divine crystals that the elves themselves grow are the same as superpower crystals. The divine stone tree is able to restore the player's energy. Kagai asked, that is, if they can protect the elves in their settlement, they will receive a reward? He replied that this is usually how it happens. Suddenly he felt sad and thought that in his past life, some players developed a different strategy. They killed the ugly monsters after the elves' defense was completely broken through, then you could get a lot of fragments of magic crystals. He walked to the very edge of the cliff and, looking towards the settlement, said that then they will have to wait a very long time. She asked what exactly? He replied with a smile that they should wait for a lucky break and thought that receiving a small reward might be as enjoyable as having exclusive access to resources. Meanwhile, several fireballs hit the walls of the settlement, and one of the elves informed the others that the city walls had been breached and everyone needed to retreat immediately. At that moment, Lin Luo decided to join the fight and called Kagai after him. Small monsters began to crawl out of the cave. They gathered in one pile and turned into a huge captain of level 35 ugly monsters. His attack power is 500 units, agility 121, defense 430, health 100,000, experience 350,000. He has the skill Divine Light of Death, In a state of great anger, he will shoot deadly beams of light from his mouth, aiming at the enemy's eyes. This attack deals 800 points of damage, and the enemy begins to necrose. He walked up to the tree and reached for it, but suddenly his hand was cut off with one deft swing of the blade. MC's duplicates landed next to him at the magic tree, and he said with a loud laugh that he got more than he expected. The monster captain got angry and asked how dare he steal his food? Is he looking for death? MC remained silent and tore the crystal from the tree, then smashed it and ordered the Lord of Prayers to wake up. His double appeared next to him and, feeling a surge of strength, thanked his master, after which he said that he wished for the Dark Emperor's next attacks to be ruthless and critical until the monster captain died. The Lord of Prayer obeyed him and used his skill to grant his wish. The captain of the abominable monsters gathered strength in his fist, and the Dark Emperor approached and dealt powerful blows. Lin Luo shouted for Kagaya to quickly change the form of the Rainy Knight's sword. Now they need to direct all their strength to the Dark Emperor. His attacks will help them win. She said yes, then jumped up and opened the umbrella. It was just in time. The monster hit right on the umbrella, which became a shield for Kagaya and the Dark Emperor. In addition, other small monsters with huge clubs began to attack and shout at them. Kagaya jumped up and kicked them. The monster's clubs flew in different directions. The Dark Emperor waited for her, and then they both ran towards the monster captain to attack. They swung their fists and struck, and several system alerts appeared. Lin Luo's double named Kagaya was able to deal 200 points of damage to the disgusting monster captain. His double, the Dark Emperor, was able to deal 370 points of critical damage to the disgusting monster captain. The ability of robbery and violence was successfully activated. He received 27,900 points of health. Kagaya jumped higher and struck at the head. The Dark Emperor was below and dodged the club. The monster stopped for a second, and then raised its head up and began to loudly inhale a lot of air, turning it into green steam. A bright ball with an aura appeared above his head. Lin Luo cried out in alarm. Could this be the permissive light of death? Kagaya must defend herself with all her might. The captain of the monsters began to release a huge, powerful stream of liquid, constantly increasing, but Kagaya covered herself and the Dark Emperor with an umbrella. When the stream stopped, smoke remained, steam came out from her umbrella, and Kagaya herself gradually dissolved, standing in front of the Dark Emperor. Lin Luo thought, although Kagaya has the ability of a powerful attack and high defense, it is a pity that her life energy is consumed so quickly. This destructive light of death seriously consumes the energy of the doppelganger, and even the Dark Emperor lost some energy. He squeezed the green crystal and told the Dark Emperor to use the time after the main attack and attack. Their opponent is not fighting at full power. Many bright streams surrounded the doppelganger. He screamed, and then the sounds of numerous blows were heard. The monster twisted his face in pain while the Emperor delivered attacks with a bright aura. The ability of robbery and violence was successfully activated. Lin Luo was able to restrain the power of the destructive light of death by 30%. The ability of robbery and violence was successfully activated. For an excellent attack, he received plus 150 points of strength. The third time of activation, the enemy was trapped. His reward was plus 36 points of agility. The Dark Emperor dealt the last two and most powerful blows. Then rocks and monster parts flew around the area. Slime fell to the ground. The system congratulated the player. He killed the captain of the ugly monsters. His reward was plus 9,500,000 experience points. 1,400 experience was obtained for killing a monster above level 13. The ability of 100 battles. The result of plus 200 experience was received for killing monsters. Lin Luo has enough experience to activate another ability for his profession of 10,000 swords. He looked at the panel with satisfaction and clicked to activate the ability. He rose into the air, surrounded by a spiral of bright aura and wind. Suddenly small mouths appeared from the puddles of mucus. They began to attack Lin Luo in long streams, opening their mouths. He grinned and activated the skill 1,000 swords, after which many bright portals appeared in the air, from which swords came out. The protagonist put forward his palm, from which a bright spiral appeared, he said, forward and pointed swords at the monsters. Many swords and glowing streams pierced the small monsters. Lin Luo sank to the ground and clenched his fist. He thought quite a bit. The attack power had increased greatly, and the combat power did not decrease with the double blow. This is cool. But he was sad, because if they stopped attacking for even a second, a lot of damage would be lost. An image of a powerful mage appeared in his head. Lin Luo remembered that when a mage reaches the first level, he gets two new professions, magic recovery and magic absorption. The first ability can speed up the recovery of vital energy, and the second is the absorption of monster energy. It's good that there is an opportunity to think and choose the right ability, and put it into practice. Of course, he doesn't want such a wonderful ability to be used as a backup option. Such power should only be used once. He looked at the tree with crystals. Now he will see how many more fragments of the god crystal he can get. The protagonist waved his hand in bright energy, like a dagger, hit the tree. After a big flash, many crystals fell out. He collected it in one hand and said, wow, more than 100 fragments. Such a number is equivalent to 5 SSS level super crystals. He looked at the small sprout. There is an advantage in skipping levels. If you advance through the levels too quickly, then next time there may not be so many fragments of the god crystals. The protagonist took several tickets and happily said, okay, it seems it's time for him to use 10 draws in the roulette. He called the Lord of Prayers. The double bowed and greeted the master. Lin Luo hugged him and said that he was offering his friend 2 S-level life extension potions. He regretted that he had to spend so much effort to save him. The Lord of Prayer answered the Lord, then he proposed not to change his wish, but to add one restriction. Lin Luo called out the roulette of fate, and a star device appeared in front of him. It said that in the next 10 draws, items above the S level must appear. And among the presented items of the S level and above, the life extension potion will not appear. The arrow spun strongly and crystals with bright tails fell out of the roulette directly to Lin Luo. He took the crystal and said that this was wonderful. He now had a golden legend. This was the SS level cooling crystal. It allowed him to reduce the time it took to recover strength after a battle. He clenched his fist and crushed the crystal. A stream of golden and bright matter flowed down. Lin Luo was surrounded by a bright aura. He thought that now, thanks to this, he could awaken 2 professions of the S level and above. In any case, the S level intelligence magic crystal gives the ability to increase intelligence by 10 points. The Lord of Prayer told the master, he suggests giving this intelligence crystal to the double who needs it most. When Lin Luo looked at the intelligence of his doubles, he saw that the Lord of Prayer had a value of 180, Kagaya had 30, and the Dark Emperor had 1. He said that this question has a quick answer. But what exactly can intelligence points do? The Lord replied that intelligence is not the same as wisdom or intelligence. It is the ability to solve problems quickly. He imagined the Dark Emperor having difficulty understanding the book he is reading. The higher the intelligence value, the faster knowledge is absorbed and experience is gained. Next to Kagaya, who is already constantly writing something for comparison, it is the ability to quickly solve problems that will manifest itself in combat, communication, and more. The protagonist thought, the Dark Emperor attacks only with great force. And as the monsters became higher and higher in level, their strength prevailed over the Dark Emperor, showing him as not very skilled. He looked at the crystal. It seemed that this crystal was what the Dark Emperor needed the most right now. He threw the crystal to the doppelganger and told the Dark Emperor to take it. He squeezed and broke the crystal. The wind and fragments enveloped him, and then the Dark Emperor felt the change. He bowed and thanked the Lord for his concern. He would do everything to remove all obstacles in the Lord's way. The protagonist said that when he grew up, he would no longer need his help in managing the battle. The Emperor responded with agreement. Lin Luo scratched his head and sighed, saying, the increase in experience points is never as fast as when directly plundering. He gave the Lord of Prayer another bright crystal. It will give the ability to increase the limit of life energy. But then he must help him find another S-rank ability for their week-long journey. The crystal in the Lord's hands glowed even brighter. It was enveloped in streams of magic and smoke. He said that he agreed with the Lord. At night in a dark alley, the guy flew back and hit the trash can hard, spitting out blood. He said to Yan Yong, they are classmates. He asks not to take this seriously. The guy said with an evil grin, he has awakened an A-level talent. Someday they will just leave him. Yan Yong stood up with trembling legs. His fists were burning with flames. He asked, doesn't he think this is too much? Yan Yong ran towards him and swung his fist, shouting, last time he hit him in the face, wasn't he talking too much, trying to empty himself on his head? But suddenly his fist flame went out when a wet tentacle grabbed it. He asked, what? Many huge tentacles appeared from the guy's back. He asked Yan Yong not to exert himself too much. Does he think that he is the only one who hides his talent level? If he didn't think this doppelganger was too ugly, he would have killed him long ago. He shouted in shock, how is this possible? Not even one person in thousands can obtain an S-level ability, and he, a scoundrel, actually obtained such an S-level ability. He was high above, there were tentacles holding his legs and arms. Yan Yong screamed, is this really a case where evil is stronger than good? As if from a video, Lin Luo saw it all and said with a creepy grin that he found a new target for robbery. The boy grinned and approached the dissatisfied classmate and asked why little Yan Yong wasn't going crazy anymore. His friends were behind him and said, it's true, he can continue to test Zhou Yu's strength. What does Yan Yong think? Is it right that an A-level ability has awakened within him? Zhou Yu's brother has an S-level talent. A green aura appeared. Yan Yong was even higher in the air. The tentacles squeezed him tighter, and he screamed. Zhou Yu said today Yan Yong will go with him so that he can practice his green demon skill. He suddenly turned away dissatisfied. Someone screamed, it's so late, what are they even doing? A woman came up to them and said, he's his classmate, he has no right to bully others just because of his high ability. Yan Yong barely kept his consciousness and called for Teacher Chen, and the excited students said in fear, this is bad, the teacher has come. He replied indifferently, why are they panicking? If she found out, he had nothing to worry about. He directed all the tentacles and green aura at her. Her whole body was grabbed and squeezed by the tentacles. She screamed, what is he doing? He is just a student. Zhou Yu licked his lips and stroked the frightened teacher's face. He knows that she secretly admires boys like them. How does the teacher think he wants to do? Her legs began to shake, and the tentacles crawled up. She blushed and moaned as her body was increasingly covered by the tentacles. Yan Yong screamed that Zhou Yu was just a monster. But he replied that after he had fun, he would finish off little Yan Yong. Suddenly, all of his tentacles began to fall down, cut into pieces. The teacher also fell. Zhou Yu, who had Kagaya behind him, was scared and asked who it was. He saw that his friends' necks were cut, from which blood gushed out. Zhou Yu's tentacles became much larger, their number increased. He told everyone to get out of there, they were acting very stupid. Footsteps were heard. Lin Luo grinned. He proudly walked up with Kagaya and asked, "Is his name Zhou? The guy pointed at him and answered, he does not remember that there was someone with an S-class ability in their school. Who is he? The protagonist snapped his finger and called the Lord of Prayers, who took out a book. The protagonist said that in just 30 seconds, someone would be in great pain, and the Lord accepted his order. Zhou angrily screamed, calling Lin Luo a scoundrel. He asked him, "Who is he anyway?" The protagonist smiled and replied, "His identity doesn't matter. He has 3 seconds to think of his last words before he dies." The furious guy jumped up. His tentacles spread out in different directions. He screamed, "This is his face. Doesn't he have a double?" Zhou gives him 3 seconds to get out, otherwise Zhou will take care of him. The protagonist didn't move. He only summoned the Dark Emperor and ordered his double to join the fight. The frightened Zhou screamed, "How many doubles does he have?" The Dark Emperor immediately ran up to the guy and began to strike at the tentacles with sweeping blows. His hand was grabbed by one of the limbs, and soon all his arms and legs were squeezed by tentacles. The Dark Emperor asked, "What?" Zhou sneered, "And how many doubles does Lin Luo have?" A slimy green aura enveloped him, and he ordered the green demon to eat the double. Lin Luo laughed and called Kagaya. She immediately cut several tentacles with her sword. A beautiful Sakura aura emanated from her. Kagaya seriously made many cuts, easily cutting off Zhou's limbs, which fell at his feet. In a panic, Zhou fell to the ground and told Lin Luo to wait. He is also a victim, pointing to Yang Yong. He lied that he is a victim. His brother was bullied. He just wanted to protect his brother. He is also for justice. An angry Yang Yong shouted at Zhou to stop talking nonsense. A dark and bloody aura enveloped him. Zhou does not need to make excuses. He is so weak. He does terrible things, although he has the power to fight evil, so he will deal with it himself right now. There is no need to waste the police's time. In a panic, Zhou began to ask the teacher to save him. He really wants to go to university. But soon the teacher's face showed the same fear. Kagaya struck from behind and blood spurted out from Zhou in all directions. When he fell unconscious, she began to scream, and Lin Luo came to Zhou in a pool of blood. He said this scoundrel still wanted to get help from the teacher. He hates such people the most. They do evil when they have the opportunity to do something good, so for them, death is happiness. He activated the robbery ability and was surrounded by dark streams from Zhou's back. The robbery ability was successfully activated. The protagonist looked at several balls of energy in his hand and thought, this ability. Yang Yong came up to him and scratched his head and said that he was grateful. Lin Luo has nothing to say? Then he called the Dark Emperor and said that it was time for them to go have a snack. The 3 of them began to leave. Kagaya happily said yes. The delighted Yang Yong blushed and said that he would one day become the same as the Dark Emperor. The protagonist was sitting in a cafe and looking at the system panel. He was a little surprised. This ability is too general. Perfect combination. The effect can extract the essence of any 2 monsters and mix them together perfectly. All relevant characteristics will be retained. This ability lasts about 5 minutes. The waiting time is 1 day. He thought, by the way, the waiting time is too long. It is not suitable for this test. It is better to test this ability in real combat. The protagonist ordered the green demon to appear. A bright sticky aura enveloped him. Several tentacles with hands appeared from his back. He did not think that he would get such an improvement. When he received it, it was as if he felt a dozen new hands that moved freely. Level S, Strength 100, but 10 for ordinary people, Agility 100, Intelligence 2, Defense 150, Health 6000. Above is the inventory of each double, a total of 15 items. Energy 200 out of 200, Energy Recovery Speed 1 point per hour, Height 120, Range 5 meters. Imperfect Fusion, any 2 beings can merge, each fusion requires 10 units of energy. Elastic Skin, 50% immunity to blunt force, spells and similar attacks. Damage taken from sharp attacks will be increased by 20%. Details need to be clarified with the system. He thought, no wonder the Dark Emperor's attacks were useless, and Kagaya was able to kill him with 1 blow. But the Dark Emperor has many interesting attacks and a special level of defense against spells, so he can also be considered a good double. The protagonist stretched quite a bit. They resolved all the issues, so he will treat them to fried chicken. All 3 doubles were happy. The Dark Emperor thanked him. The Lord of Prayer said that Lin Luo is the best. Eating fried chicken is a wise decision. Kagaya was the happiest of all, saying, hooray, fried chicken is her favorite food. Lin Luo licked his lips and placed an order. They will have to wait a little longer. A waitress came running up to them, greeted them and asked if they had ordered 300 servings of Peking chicken rolls, 300 servings of tender beef, 100 servings of cod hamburgers and 400 cups of cola. Lin Luo replied that everything was correct, but was told that their restaurant did not have that much food. Then he asked her to bring as much as they had. He thought that it seemed that in half a year the food problem would become global. The space crystal could store food from the moment it was placed there, so they had to stock up in advance. Worried, Kagaya told the gentleman to look out the window. The weather outside was getting worse. The protagonist said that this was a rat-level disaster, a plague of insects that had flown in from another dimension. 2 huge and scary spider monsters were screaming and hissing. A frightened woman was running away from them with her child. She screamed, asking for help. She was asking to save her child. She started crying and screaming when the spider grabbed her blouse from behind. She fell, and the giant monster growled and approached, creating clouds of dust. She got up and ran again, screaming for the monster to let her go. She asked for someone to save her. The spider tried to grab her again, but tore her jacket. Lin Luo at that moment ran up and covered the frightened woman with his body. He grinned and calmly walked up to the giant monster. He called the Lord of Prayers and said that he wanted to make a wish. Let the white smoke around him dissipate. The Lord replied that the wish would come true. A huge and powerful beam of light flew through the crowd of spiders and a cloud of smoke. The spider stood quietly and bled. Streams of energy passed through Lin Luo, raising the wind. After that, he struck the spider in front of him with a dagger many times, after which the monster was cut in half. The system congratulated the player Dark Emperor. He killed the level 7 spider monster. His reward is 640 experience points, 400% disaster experience bonus, the ability of 100 battles 200 points, experience bonus. Soon several chopped spiders lay in front of him. He said of course, he will not receive additional equipment and items after the kill. But then, he would get 4 times more experience points than he had. But after the spiders, a huge locust with a bloody aura appeared. Lin Luo summoned the Dark Emperor and Kagaya. It's time for them to go out and kill the monsters, raising their levels. Kagaya appeared and immediately swung her sword several times, killing the locusts. The system congratulated him. Lin Luo's double Kagaya killed the giant locust of level 3. His reward is 64 experience points, 800% bonus to experience points. The Dark Emperor punched and the insect flew apart. The system congratulated him. The double Dark Emperor killed the giant locust of level 3. His reward is 64 experience points, 800% bonus to experience points. There were dark clouds in the sky, locusts were flying over the city, and spider monsters were climbing around the houses. Lu Tianshi asked Lao, "Wow, is this really a fusion of an alien and a praying mantis? This seems like some kind of joke." And Lao Yu replied, "For ordinary people, such phenomena are simply a real disaster. But for people like them, who have awakened real abilities and strength, it is a huge fortune." Lu Tianshi asked, "So the experience points are 4 times more?" Lao Yu turned around. "It is true. Originally only 6 days after the general awakening, the first holder of the second profession appeared. Yesterday, the Dark Emperor entered the second level of consciousness, so the first wave of rat-level disasters also came early. But nothing terrible happened. In the evening he found that they were ready to form a strong team. Then they used the insect's affinity for light to their advantage. Then they will soon be able to reach the 20th level and complete the second circle of consciousness." He broke the glass into small pieces with his palm. They all began to jump out. Lu Tianshi was in front. They will see who can get the most resources and experience. Lin Luo and his double stood amidst the smoke and the spiders with the locusts cut into small pieces. He thought, after the large-scale killing spree, those bugs seemed to have overcome their instinct to seek light and did not dare to come too close to them, but this was temporary. He ordered Kagaya and the Dark Emperor to guard the place. Lin Luo entered the cafe and asked if his order was ready. The workers were hiding behind the delivery table and said that everything was ready. He used magic to lift the products up and said that he was afraid that no one would search for the next 10 days. But they should not go out and just wait for rescue. There is food and water in the store. If they save it, it will be enough for them to survive. The woman looked at him anxiously and asked the master to take them with him. He replied that if he took them with him, they might get hurt because there are many bug monsters outside. After he left, they should immediately turn off the lights, and then figure out how to cover the windows. If there is no light, the bugs will not find them. They can only believe that China will come to the aid of its citizens. He stopped and tensed up, thinking, why did he have a bad feeling? Did he miss something? For sure. He realized that the course of events had changed due to his reincarnation, so the disaster appeared earlier. Could Wen Yusi not cope with this? He became very anxious. A giant monster praying mantis was attacking a girl who was screaming. Lu Tianshi flew from above and summoned a heavenly blessing, a manifestation of holiness. His doppelganger, an old man, appeared, who used a magic staff and lightning. He hit the insect with a powerful ball of magic and pinned the praying mantis to the ground. Lu Tianshi extended his hand to the girl and said to the miss, "Today a humble man saved her life. How did she want to repay him?" Suddenly another mantis was pierced by a beam, tearing the monster apart. The guy screamed, "The eyes of the emperor, life and death are at his disposal." He stood proudly among the smoke and told the master to let them help. Lu Tianshi turned around and said that his behavior as a thief is very bad. The guy replied, "Isn't he there to help the master?" The second team member said, "The monster has finally been defeated. Does he think they don't mind if he reuses what's left of the monster?" A ghost of a mantis appeared above the corpse. Bright lightning and flashes appeared. He said, "Everything is for the king of this creature. It will rise again." Lu Tianshi showed an approving sign and said, "Is this the same SS level ability of the Shadow King?" Lao Yu really found partners who are incredibly powerful. The protagonist ran among the smoke, cutting the flying locusts in half along the way. Lu Tianshi noticed him and asked, "What?" Jing Lily also sees him. Is he like them, killing monsters to level up and gain experience? He replied, "Most people don't have the ability to predict the future. Maybe this person had some ability, and was able to break out and escape." Lao Yu looked at all this with displeasure, and said nothing. The protagonist continued to run and thought that according to his original prediction, Wen Yuxi's sister should have survived this disaster. He began to knock loudly on the door. She should open it immediately. He needed to make sure, just make sure that his family was safe. The woman asked, "When Yusi came back?" Lin Luo was surprised, and when she opened the door, she asked, "Is this little Lin Luo?" He asked, "Where is Aunt Li and Wen Yuxi's sister, aren't they at home?" She replied that her aunt should have returned from work a long time ago, and Wen Yuxi is not home yet. She doesn't know, maybe something happened, because now there is a white fog outside and the network on her mobile phone is not working, she doesn't even know what to do. He thought in a panic, of course, Wen Yuxi's sister didn't come back, something must have happened. He told her not to worry, he would find Wen Yuxi's sister, she must promise him not to go out, no matter what noise she heard, even the window must not be opened. She was confused and said that she agreed. In the darkness, he ran among the houses. This is bad, in this situation, without awakening the combat ability, meeting monsters is almost a guarantee of death. He continued to run through the emptiness and smoke, he hoped that Wen Yuxi's sister was safe. The Dark Emperor said that he sensed a person nearby. He took on a physical form and pointed at the girl who was bleeding. Lin Luo said that she could no longer be saved, it seemed that the scale of the disaster had increased, so Wen Yuxi's sister must be found as soon as possible. He called the Lord of Prayer and ordered him to immediately tell him where Wen Yuxi was. His book began to glow brightly, shining streams began to envelop Lin Luo, as if he was standing on a map with the designation of himself and Wen Yuxi. He clenched his fist and resolutely thought that he would be there soon. Wen Yuxi must wait for him. There were many insects near the building, and inside the 3 workers were shaking with fear. Wen asked, "What should they do now? They won't be able to get out." Wen Yuxi replied that she shouldn't be afraid, the inspectors must definitely save them. The guy grabbed his head and said that the end of the world had come, they would all die, none of them would survive, absolutely none. Suddenly, he looked at the girls like a madman, he began to run towards them, stretching out his hand with dark energy, and they screamed, "What is he doing?" The girls began to step aside in fear. The guy asked, "What is he doing?" "He is enjoying the moment of life. God did not lock them in there for no reason, he wants them to die together." Wen Yuxi asked him to calm down, and Wen shouted discontentedly that he was shameless and scary. Even if he remained the only man in the world, she still would not be interested in him. He told her to shut up because he wouldn't be interested in Wen either. At this time he grabbed Wen Yuxi by the arms, and she screamed in fear. Wen ran up to him and screamed in panic for him, the bastard, to let her go, but the guy viciously hit her, telling her to leave. Wen hit the wall. He had already taken off his belt, and said that her brother was still with women, she should let him die without regrets. He sat on Wen Yuxi, and she cried and screamed for him to leave her. The guy slapped her in the face and viciously said that she was disgusting, if she didn't want it herself, then he would force her with drinks. He had already pushed her to the floor and leaned over the crying girl. At the same moment the glass broke loudly and shattered into pieces. He turned around displeased and said, "These are insects, bugs have come." But after his words, Lin Luo hit the guy in the jaw so hard that his blood gushed out, and he flew back. Wen Yuxi asked in surprise, "Is it Lin Luo?" He apologized for coming late to Wen Yuxi's sister and lifted her up. At this time, the evil colleague shouted, "What's wrong with him? Now there are insects, they will all die." The protagonist looked at him with displeasure and malice, calling the Dark Emperor. His double appeared and immediately hit the guy. He screamed from the bright lightning and the force of the blow. The Dark Emperor squeezed his throat. The guy asked to let him go, and Lin Luo asked what he wanted to do with Wen Yuxi. The Dark Emperor squeezed his throat harder. He again asked to save him. Lin Luo shouted displeasingly for him to speak, and the guy repeated with difficulty that he had already said to let him go. Then the Dark Emperor threw him to the floor. The colleague crawled to Lin Luo and hugged his knees. He screamed that he was wrong. He had not done anything yet. He asked to spare him. He gives up. The protagonist asked terribly, "Is he still near them?" He will give him 2 options. He will be beaten by Lin Luo now, or he will go outside. There will be a chance to survive. The guy thanked him for sparing him and said that he will go outside. He ran away, and Lin Luo called the Lord of Prayers and said that he has a wish. In 5 minutes there will be 100 insects around him. The worker ran away and thought that they were fools. Lin Luo broke the glass. None of them will survive. Good thing he knows a place nearby where he can hide while he waits for them to die. But he was immediately grabbed by an insect and lifted up. He screamed, and when he fell to the ground, an army of insect monsters flew towards him. They began to eat him. He screamed and bled. The protagonist comforted Wen Yuxi and said that everything was fine. She asked, "Did Lin Luo really let him go?" And the protagonist asked, "How is this possible?" He dared to offend the most important person to Lin Luo. He will let him die from the hundreds of insect monsters and other countless creatures. Only then will he pay for his sins. Wen Yuxi blushed and thanked him, and Kagaya asked the master, "Is she going to be his girlfriend?" They both became very embarrassed and turned away from each other. Lin Luo shouted at Kagaya not to say such outrageous things. She asked, "Why is this nonsense?" He said that she is very important to him. Does the master not like her? He awkwardly looked away and scratched his head. This. Of course not. What is she talking about? No, definitely not. At this time, Wen woke up and touched her sore head. Wen Yuxi ran to her and hugged her. She happily called her. Wen Yuxi helped her up and asked if she was okay. Wen replied that she was fine, but her head still hurt. But then she hugged Wen Yuxi and shouted that the guy in front of them was mean and bad. But Wen Yuxi asked her not to worry. He is her friend. His name is Lin Luo. Besides, he saved them in the first place. She turned around and asked, "Friend?" "He is a handsome friend." The protagonist began to leave and said that they did not need to stay there. Soon they were outside Wen Yuxi's house, and she asked her mother to open the door. Her mother opened the door and said anxiously, "Wen Yuxi, she is back, is she okay?" Wen Yuxi cried and called her and hugged her, after which they went in and sat down to drink tea. Wen Yuxi's mother brought tea and asked how Wen was doing. Wen Yuxi replied that she was fine, Lin Luo, and she took her home first. Wen Yuxi asked where his father? Mrs. Li replied that her father is a government official. Today he said that he will spend all his time at work. The protagonist asked, was he called to work? He remembers that Uncle Wen worked in the city office, in the Hang City office. If the light source in the building attracts bugs, does that mean that they can easily enter the company? Lin Luo stood up and told Aunt Li and Wen Yuxi that he should go see Uncle. Aunt Li became hesitant. Wen Yuxi said that it was impossible, the street was dangerous, and he. But Lin Luo told her not to worry, he would be fine, he would definitely bring Uncle back. He came to the office and said, it seems that many bugs have already passed through this building, the whole building is covered in slime and a dark aura. Suddenly, he was very surprised. What kind of energy is there? The monsters in the rat level disaster are at most level 20, so they can't sense this kind of energy. Suddenly, something exploded above. Lin Luo immediately realized that it was the guardian of the insect house. An endless number of monsters flew out from the huge dark hole in the air. Rat level disaster, also known as E-category disaster, usually ranges from level 1 to level 20. If monsters appear near the progenitor, their level will be higher than the disaster itself. These monsters are called progenitor guardians. Only by killing the progenitor guardian can the disaster in a certain area be stopped. In the previous life, before entering the era of chaos, the government decided to deal with those who surrounded and suppressed the guardians. Those who succeeded in the task received a generous reward. He really doesn't know whether he is lucky or not. In any case, the size of this creature looks terrifying. Lin Luo ran into the building. He must prepare well before dealing with this. Right now, his priority is to save Uncle Wen. There, two men were scared and running away from a huge insect. They shouted to run faster. They ran into the room and quickly closed the door. Uncle Wen shouted to Old Gu to quickly move the cabinet and lock the door. If they get inside, they will be doomed. Together they moved the cabinet and propped the door. The insects immediately tried to get inside, but only left terrible dents. The men were scared. They sat silently and shook with fear, and when the glass of the room suddenly shattered into pieces, they screamed. Mr. Gu told Uncle Wen to look. The insect was no longer moving. He asked, was it really dead or was it just his imagination? A voice was heard asking, is Uncle Wen there? He looked surprised and asked, is that Lin Luo? The men cautiously walked out of the office and saw Lin Luo there, who greeted his uncle. He was standing with a dagger on the body of a bloody monster. A loud scream was heard outside. No, this is bad. The team stood in front of a huge crystal. They saw a system message. The player who completed the level is the Dark Emperor. The time spent on completing the level is 1 hour 52 minutes. The time until the secret world is updated is 18 hours. Lao Yu clenched his fist and said, the holy land in the forest is a secret place to obtain energy. He can't believe that the Dark Emperor cleared the level first. He thought that this scoundrel robbed him of several major achievements that would help him reach the strongest awakened. And now the secret worlds are over earlier than he thought. The team member asked, he cleared the secret world of level 30 and 35 alone. What's taking so long? If the secret world continues to fight, will his doppelganger's energy be able to withstand it? Lao Yu said dissatisfied, the energy consumption in the secret realm with normal attack methods is not that great. It can help the NPC when needed. But he never imagined that someone would come first. Lu Tianxue told Lao Yu that this Dark Emperor is so similar to him. He is the one who returned from the future. He replied that he thinks Lu Tianxue is right. But as long as he doesn't know what ability the Dark Emperor used to take away his power, how could he come together with Lao Yu? Lu Tianxue thought, the only drawback of awakening SS level abilities is that their counterparts have become too strong. They need a lot of energy. Lao Yu turned around and started walking, saying that they have little time left. There are still a few secret places to explore. He does not believe that the Dark Emperor can clear them all out. He frowned angrily and thought that sooner or later they will meet the Dark Emperor. They were already at home. Aunt and uncle asked Lin Luo what was going on. How did he become so strong? It was like a superhero movie, a beetle even bigger than a cow, and he did it so easily. He replied that he awakened as an S-level talent. Uncle Wen asked in amazement, is S-level so strong? He awakened as AD-level talent strength, which accelerates the recovery of physical strength. But the maximum can only lift a person 5 floors without losing his breath. Aunt Li has AC-level ability intelligence, which makes her brain much more resilient. Everyone says that this gift can prevent Alzheimer's disease. Wen Yuxi happily hugged him from behind and said that she was still better than him. She had awakened the A-level ability of nature sounds. This incredible ability can make her singing even more beautiful. It also allows the owner to restore physical strength and improve old skills. Aunt Li said that was right, but what is Lin Luo's ability? He began to worry. But Wen Yuxi said, how can you ask a stranger about his personal matters so directly? Aunt Li said that Wen Yuxi was right. She was asking too many questions. It was just that Lin Luo had grown up. It was hard for her to get used to it. He replied that it was okay. He had awakened the ability of heavenly justice. It gave him incredible attack power. When Yuxi said that he was so cool, she asked him to go with him if he went to clear the dungeon. Otherwise she would not dare to go alone. The protagonist seemed to sparkle with joy and agreed. Uncle Wen said, well, the historians were right that every generation has its own talents, and now the world is undergoing great changes. There should be a place for him in another society. Lin Luo should take advantage of this opportunity. He smiled and said that he knew it. Uncle Wen stood up and said that he thanked him for his help. They had a spare guest room. He could stay and sleep there. Lin Luo began to panic and said that he was uncomfortable, but when Yusi had already taken his hand and said that he was talking nonsense, he could just stay for the night. Uncle Wen looked at Wen Yusi and Lin Luo laughing. He had once lost contact with a boy who had lived in an orphanage for many years, but today he saved his family. The protagonist sat on the bed. In this life he unexpectedly saved Wen Yusi's sister and her father, but he could not stay there for long. He still had to save his brother. He dried his hair with a towel. He still had so much to do. It was a pity that he had to leave Wen Yusi's house. But the most important thing now was to improve his Su and find another S-level double. There was a monster in the street among the strange and creepy smoke. The man stretched out his hands to him. He was enveloped in smoke and magic. He said that he would connect them. The despair and fear of all living things. The demon of despair can come out. A hand appeared from the dark space in a bright flash, and then the giant and scary demon said that he smelled a wonderful smell. Hu Jinming said as if possessed, is this an SS level double? He began to laugh. Now this is his double. The monster enveloped everything with its dark aura. In a devilish whisper, it told its servant to sacrifice all his despair and fear to him, then he would grant him incredible power. The man looked at the double as if spellbound, and his daughter asked, Daddy? He seemed to have forgotten about her, but then sat down next to her and said that he needed to go to the store to buy food. Could she stay at home? The girl said yes, she would wait for his return. A huge demon with his aura loomed over her and laughed, and she was frightened and began to call her dad. Lin Luo stepped on the fence and looked around the entire night city. He and the Lord of Prayers were standing on the roof. He said, the smiling coffin and the 5 heads, Liu Ming, Zhou Yu were killed by him. But 2 more received S-level talent, Hu Jinming, Guo Tao. He said that he had a wish. He wanted to know the location of Hu Jinming. The Lord surrounded him with a sparkling aura and took out a book. His wish will be granted. Lin Luo replied, great. He jumped down and with the help of magic smoothly descended, happily saying that the hunting season has begun. The system reported that the Terror Lord Doppelganger killed a level 6 giant bee. The reward is 300 points. For 100% disaster experience bonus, he needs to kill monsters above level 4 and get 500% disaster experience points.